In the heart of Franklin, Tennessee, creativity and healing meet under the buzz of a tattoo needle. But for Will Bledsoe, owner of Battleground Tattoo Parlour, the journey here was anything but ordinary. Today, Will shares his personal story of resilience, redemption, and finding peace after overcoming patterns of abuse and trauma that once shaped his life. This video contains discussions about abuse and substance use, as well as strong language, which may be distressing for some viewers. Your discretion is advised.
Don't start. Because we open that shit and I'm just laughing. Oh, shoot. Alright, so welcome to our first episode of Two Tough Nuts, and we're honored to have our first guest, Will Bledsoe. Will and I have known each other for a long time. We first met back, I think, in 2010.
I believe so.
Because you tattooed my daughter's name on my ribcage, Josie, and so Will and I kind of go way back. He's got a great story, and a story that I feel like needs to be shared. Will and I have a lot in common as far as our background, and Will, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing Chance and I to talk to you tonight and kind of hear your story, and we know that your story is going to inspire a lot of other men out there that are probably dealing with some of the same issues, and that's our goal with this podcast, is to shed some light on areas that men deal with. And we are by no means experts. This is more for education purposes, and to kind of just share testimonies and help other men relate to maybe some things they're going through in their lives. So non-formal man, just going to kind of kick it off. Love to hear about kind of start with your childhood and where you grew up, and just kind of go from there, man.
Awesome. Well, I'm flattered and honored to be here. It's while I think there's probably more hot podcasts than not these days, it's always good to see people that you care about doing things that you believe in. So, yeah, man, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm a native Tennessean from a small town called Pulaski, Tennessee, in Giles County, about an hour and a half south of here. My dad's side of the family was from down there. I lived there till I was 8. Moved to Nashville in 1987, 1988. I'm the middle child of 3 siblings. I have an older half sister, and a younger brother. It was a great place to grow up, I feel like. It was a factory town in the 80s under the Reagan administration. It was... We didn't lock our doors. We lived in the country,
Nice.
like not necessarily like super rural. My grandfather and uncle were dairy farmers, so we had that, but we lived out past the bypass, and there was an antebellum mansion right up the road from us that was before the Civil War. So we had stone walls that slaves had built, and Hood's Retreat went through our property, so we found mini balls and belt buckles and stuff.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, man. Like there was either a skirmish or part of that battle was on that property.
So you're really into like Civil War history then?
A little bit. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I named my shop Battleground, was because of where we are.
What shop is that, so you can tell our viewers?
I own and operate Battleground Tattoo Parlour in Franklin, Tennessee, and have since 2015.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yep. I'm not super into it. I have interests in like metal detecting and the history and that kind of thing. So
that goes along with getting older, though.
Okay, for sure.
Wearing White Sox and you kids, get out of there! There's gold in that ground.
One of my guys that tattoos for me, like I shared this photo that this metal detecting group on Facebook shared. I said, "Yeah, man, I follow this page on metal detecting." He goes, "Of course you do."
That's awesome.
So yeah, man. It was a good town to grow up in. Like I feel like a lot of us that are now hitting middle age, that grew up in the 70s and 80s, or 80s and early 90s. It was a different world, man. It was a different world. There weren't as many feelings being flung around. I grew up in a pretty abusive home. Okay. Like that was one of those things that was just either not talked about as much, or maybe just it was
the norm.
Like when you don't know what an elephant is and one's sitting in your living room, then it's just part of the furniture.
Right.
So my dad was a high-functioning drug addict and alcoholic. He got smacked by a little old lady in a Nova on his chopper in the mid-'70s. Shattered both of his femurs. He had Frankenstein scars like that long where they had rebuilt his legs. He spent almost 2 years in a hospital bed. My mom was a nurse, and she said that he had decubitus ulcers, bed sores that were the size of her hand.
No kidding.
Yeah, he got down to like 150 pounds. Like it was bad. And he came out of there with a serious morphine monkey, you know, and that was just kind of omnipresent through the majority of his life.
And how old were you when that happened?
It was before I was born.
Oh, before you were born.
Before I was born.
Okay.
He and my mom both worked at the hospital in Fayetteville, there in Lincoln County.
Okay.
That's where they met. He was a phlebotomist and a lab tech, and she was a nurse.
Okay.
Both my parents were late in life children. They were oops babies. You know, both their parents were in their 40s when they were born. So my grandparents were old. Like my dad's dad was born in 1906.
Oh wow!
Yeah. My mom's dad was born in 1913. So like it was old.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that there were. I definitely believe in generational trauma, and I believe that you know my parents had no clue how to recognize those patterns of behavior and much less step outside of them. So there was nobody in my family knew what emotional regulation was. Like an emotional or regulated nervous system that like I mean, and we're talking about brilliant people on paper. My grandfather was like a certified genius. Graduated high school at 15 years old.
No kidding.
Yeah, gold medaled in physics and chemistry and that kind of stuff. But he operated on such a high level that it was really difficult for him to be around normal people.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know, like he was just incredibly critical. You know, like really hard to dumb it down.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, there was no safe place in our home. You know, like if something occurred, then it was 0 to 100.
Okay,
gotcha. Pretty quick. So I grew up kind of the invisible kid. Like I watched my older sister and my younger brother just kind of unravel as human beings through the course of our childhood together, and they were so much trouble for my people, my parents, my grandparents, that I was good to be fed and clothed, and like, are you okay? Okay, good. We got to deal with these two.
Oh, wow.
You know? So I spent a lot of my childhood alone on a bicycle. Like late 80s, early 90s. Like, I mean, it was, I could ride a bicycle for miles and miles.
Did that cause you to kind of have jealousy towards your siblings?
It wasn't necessarily jealousy towards my siblings so much as it was not understanding why we were different. It was like I said, I felt invisible. It was just like, and that's apparently a middle child phenomenon. Is there's usually one, and if you have three or more children, there's usually one, if not two, that are going to be problematic. And
really,
oh yeah, like statistically speaking, and like I said, usually one. But in certain instances, there's more than that. Like my baby brother, like we had a dog that we went from having a 3-acre place out in the country where we could run and play and no leashes, no chained up, nothing like that. We moved to the city. We lived in Donaldson, underneath like the air pattern where the airplanes would land at the airport. Like had a train in the backyard, and airplanes going over, lots of traffic.
That's a big change.
Big change.
Yeah,
so the dog kind of went nuts, and so we had to keep him chained up. And he would, about once every 3 months, he would pop, and he would roll on the ground. He figured out that he could roll on the ground, it would lock that chain up, and that it could release that catch. Yeah. And he would fucking hit it. And he would run for like 3 days. Wow. And then he would drag home, and he would be like, all right, put it back. I'm good. And that was kind of like my brother.
Really?
Like he was, there was nothing that got through to him after that. That moving from like 2-parent household out in the country, you could run around, relatively untethered, to a very constricted, very prim and proper. Like we grew up peeing outside. If you're out playing, like you're a little boy, like you go over to the bushes. There you go. Like my grandmother, my very proper septuagenarian, 70-some-odd-year-old blue-haired grandmother was just aghast. At, we don't do that, my dear. It's just not done. So
We're peeing in the yard.
yeah, the boys are pissing in the yard. So it was just a weird experience.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'd been told by, my parents had been told by one of my teachers in the 3rd grade that I had a learning disability because I didn't like to do math, like to draw.
Yeah.
So when we moved to Nashville, I got tested, and lo and behold, I didn't have a learning disability. I was gifted. I knew from an early age that I wanted to make art, and I knew from an early age that I was different, and because it wasn't something that was omnipresent in my life, but it was kind of tucked back in the back of my mind for me. When you're at a birthday party and you see the interaction between other kids and their families, you're like, that's not how it is in my house. It's weird, So I mean, I think I developed a rather feral survival instinct, like to notice when you deal with having violence in your home as a child, you learn to be attuned to people's moods, and you can kind of suss out when things are getting weird.
So you're constantly on eggshells.
Constantly, it's called hypervigilance.
Yeah.
So you're constantly like, okay, well, I'm ready to fight or flight at any given moment.
Yeah.
So that was definitely something that happened in my life, and until my adult life in therapy.
Yeah.
Right. I was totally unaware of that. So.
It's an interesting thing. There's probably a lot of people out there that deal with that. And I know, like, I came from a similar home, maybe not to the extreme, but certainly some abuse, some severe alcoholism, a lot of mental games too.
True.
And the one thing, the more people I meet, the more people I talk to that have that background, there's a lot of guys out there that are just always on edge and waiting for the dime to drop. Did you cope with that as a kid, or did it take years and years to kind of even realize that's what was going on?
I mean, I didn't know that was what was going on until I was an adult. I have 2 really, really, really close friends, Jones and Doug, and both of them. Jones had like your archetypal like apple pie, amazing parents. He still talks to his parents. They have a fantastic relationship. Doug grew up with a very violent stepfather that was just a heinous human being, and so he and I have kind of led a parallel existence. He owns his own businesses, and he's done amazing things, but I mean he's always on, always hyper vigilant, and it took us kind of sitting down. It's one of those friendships where you may not see or speak to this person for a couple months, but as soon as you do, like it's no time lapsed whatsoever. So it took getting into grief and trauma counseling to really get a grasp on these concepts.
How old were you when you got into therapy?
Well, I had a couple of experiences. One was with a family counselor when I was a child, because my brother was such a whack job. Like they put him on a tranquilizer called Panalor, which is now off the market. I mean, it turned him into a fucking zombie. There's like 3 years of his life that he doesn't remember.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Man, that's rough.
Yeah, it is.
But I mean, like nothing would reach this child. I mean, like physical discipline didn't reach him. Deprivation, like, okay, we're going to take your things, didn't reach him. Like he was the child that would look at you, if you got a spanking and be like, that didn't hurt. Like he was an interesting individual.
Yeah.
And so my mom at wit's end took us to see a counselor, and it was a terrible experience. Like all she did, she made the whole family cry. Like it was like nothing. Nothing productive. So then I went then, and then I got hit by a drunk on my motorcycle in 2009, and he wanted me to go to see a counselor to see if that had an emotional as well as a physical impact. And it was another bad therapist. So this guy spent 3 hours asking me questions about my childhood, and then in his report, was like, oh, well, Mr. Bledsoe focused on childhood trauma, and it's like, that's all you talked about, man. Like, so I was 43 years old before I was like, okay, like I'm at a point with the events that transpired in my life that I need help.
Yeah.
I don't know how to navigate this. This is like being in a boat with no paddle and no motor, and somebody expecting you to get somewhere.
Right.
So I actually ran into my counselor at the tattoo shop. We started talking, and we had a great conversation, and I was like, what do you do? And she said, I'm a grief and trauma counselor. I was like, your tattoo is free.
Yeah.
I need your card. And she's amazing.
That's awesome.
I would highly recommend it.
That's incredible.
So I had already been on that kind of journey anyway, because I was trying desperately to figure out my life.
Right.
And like I've been through a lot of crazy stuff, and a lot of it's been my fault, and a lot of it's not. So
and the thing is, I think a lot of men, they kind of have those wounds. I mean, probably everyone, but a lot of men, especially, I think we process it different. They have those wounds, and that's all you know. So you're in this constant survival mode, and you just go through life like you were talking about, and you're constantly waiting for that other shoe to drop, and you just take it out on everybody because you're really trying to protect yourself when you don't realize that that's not normal.
Well, that very concept, waiting for the other shoe to drop, like that is pure fight or flight. That is, and post-traumatic stress is very real. Complex post-traumatic stress, which has not been an official diagnosis. It's not officially in the canon or whatever, but it's, PTSD is when you have a traumatic event. CPTSD is when you live a traumatic life.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And that's where this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened. I mean, it's a chain.
Yeah, trauma becomes
it's a chain.
Yeah.
So my therapist told me something that was really amazing at one point. She said there is a difference between victimhood and victimization. She's like, and I don't get the victimhood from you at all. She's like, have you been victimized? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bad shit has happened to you.
Right.
People have done bad things. And this is what has informed your decision tree. So, I think you're 100% correct.
You should be proud of that, man.
Well, I mean,
you should.
I don't know about all that, but
I agree.
I mean,
well, look, man. I mean, guys are stupid and simple creatures.
That's insensitive,
most of the time. Is it not true?
I take offense to
Is
that.
it not true?
No, man. I'm dumb, man. Like I get it. Like
I'm dumb.
Guys typically make not emotional, but just quick, snap decisions to do things. Let's just jump in and do it. A lot of times those are dumb things, and a lot of times they're informed by the trauma.
Right.
To go to a counselor instead of to go to drugs, which is right. Like that's a natural progression that a lot of people in that situation go. This is what I grew up with. Oh, it really does help. He was onto something. Right. Like but to go and make the decision and say, no, this person's legit. I'm going to talk to them. And work this out.
That takes balls.
It takes balls.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it was an experience that I'm incredibly grateful for. It was very validating. And she wasn't one of these that's just going to poo-poo you into, oh, yeah. And like, she's like, hey, did you really say that? Because I was honest about everything.
Right.
I mean, I said this in this situation, and she's like, really? You said that? You said that to this person? I'm like, yeah. And she goes, how'd that work out? Not really well at all. It was one of the things I wish I had never said in my life. So it was an awakening experience, but it was really bizarre because I had decided at rock bottom, a couple of years ago, to make changes in my life. And so that's what I focused everything on. I have got to make some changes.
Right.
Because if I don't, I'm not going to make it. And concurrent with my journey to heal under the guidance of a professional was my own research and my own practice and my own trying to figure this shit out. So we would have a session and Grace would be like, I want you to try to do this. And I'd be like, I do that. I'm writing a book. It's on page 43. And she's like, you're doing what? You're writing. I'm like, I've written a book. I've written a journal. In order to help myself get through these challenges and to get through the day.
Right.
To rewire my brain, because that's possible. Like there's an opportunity to, as she said, are you choosing to be a victim, or are you choosing to acknowledge that you've been victimized? and move through it, because and she told me something that was very powerful. She said that the things that have happened to you are not your fault.
Right.
In certain instances, they are your responsibility. And that was
big.
like, oh, you know, like,
yeah, that's big.
So your triggers are your responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, and how you deal with these things are your responsibility. And I will be the first one to admit, I was not versed in that.
Sure.
From childhood.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like,
What's hard is whenever you come up in a traumatic area of life, even if it's just a one-time thing, you've had trauma, or you live it every single day, it affects your emotional intelligence so much.
100%.
That you're past that, you grow up, you go through puberty, and now you're a grown man who never got the emotional quotient to match your IQ, right? So it's like, that's a challenge.
So I mean, and that was you know, one of the major things that I wanted to focus on moving forward in my life was like, okay, like, you know, I have not been kind. You know, I've not had a lot of empathy. I've been, it's like barnacles on the bottom of a ship. You know, like they form and there's this like crusty exoskeleton kind of thing, like that they have to be scraped off.
Yeah.
You know, like otherwise it's going to affect how your ship makes it through water.
I'd like to share this real quick, just because I know you well, and you know, we have a lot in common. And when I first met you, you know, tattoo shops kind of have a reputation, and I mean, I wasn't surprised. You weren't overly friendly, but I liked you because I thought you were cool. I mean, I thought you were cool, and the job I had at the time, it was law enforcement, so a lot of guys were in the shop. But when we kind of reconnected, well, I saw you again in 15 when I got my back done, but when I saw you like at Goddard School, and then when I came back, you were a different guy, man. Like you just had, like you had this almost, like you're masculine, but you had this peace about you, and you weren't like standoffish. Like when I got my back done, for the viewers, Will did my entire back, and I don't remember how many sessions. All I know is this man freehanded the whole drawing, which took 4 hours before he even started on anything. But you were just a different guy then, man. You were just kind of like me. You were just fuck the world, and everybody's trying to hurt me, and that's how I lived pretty much my life. But when I came back, you know, this would have been, I don't know, dude, probably like 21 when Jacob was at Goddard. You're just different. Like, wow, you're like a totally different guy. When I came back in the shop and got another tattoo, or just come by to see you, I'd be like, man, this is different. We go to dinner, like, you're way different, dude. So all of this, like from what I've seen, what my opinion's worth, you're a totally different. You have changed completely, man. And that's amazing considering what you've gone through.
Well, I mean, we met shortly after one of the most traumatic instances of my life. I got hit by a drunk on my motorcycle in 2009, and I have permanent spinal damage in multiple locations. I have musculoskeletal issues to this day. I have to be very careful about what I do and what I don't do. It's gotten better thanks to training under you, but at the time I was filled with this impotent rage that someone else's poor decision literally impacted my life, that impacted every single thing I did. Like at the time I was taking care of a sick parent. My mom was mobility compromised and had a degenerative neuropathy and a virulent form of rheumatoid arthritis. And right before I got ran over, she had gotten these diagnoses, and she was freaking out, and she was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I'm having a hard time taking care of myself. And I was like, well, you're my mom. I'll take care of you. And so we had planned for me to move down here and to me to be her in-home care. And so 3 weeks before that happened, I got smacked. And I moved down, expedited that because I couldn't take care of myself. You know, I couldn't get to the bathroom. My brother Jonesy had to pick me up and take me to the bathroom. Like, yeah, dude. I mean, it took 3 weeks for it to show up, but I had a bruise that went from my waist to my ankle. That was the color of that book because it's where my leg hit the motor and tank of the bike as I got thrown off. So I was filled with this. There was nothing to be done about it. I was in a lawsuit that took 4 years.
Okay.
Because insurance companies, that's what they do.
Yeah, drag it out.
They drag it out because your willpower to deal with the situation and your pocketbook are less than theirs.
Right.
That's the equation.
Right.
That's literally it. So me being me, it's like, fuck you, like we're gonna go, this is what we're gonna do. So there was that aspect to it. So you talk about hypervigilance, like I couldn't stand to be in a vehicle that I didn't drive. I couldn't ride with a girlfriend, like I could not be a passenger in a car.
So it made you a control freak.
Oh my God. Like I was like, if somebody got too close on the interstate, I'd race, so there was that. And then I learned very quickly that I'd made a poor decision to come down and take care of my mom, man. Like she was mentally sick as well as physically. And I didn't, like we had spent years of, there'd been years of no contact because of her behavior and because of the things that she would do and say, like she was manipulative, fucking evil, crazy. So that became very clear very, very quickly that I had made another poor decision, but I was stuck, because she made herself irreplaceable and invaluable. Like, I got rid of an entire house worth of furniture, like I didn't have my own dishes, she used money as a weapon.
You were kind of like the point of no return.
Oh yeah, at that point I was in for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah.
We bought a 20-acre place out past Leaper's Fork going towards Fairview with a 5,000 square foot log cabin. Like it was supposed to be this big deal. My Jonesy and my brother and their wives were going to come in. We're all going to come in together. We're going to have a compound. Yeah. And it started to shatter very quickly. My baby brother lasted like 3 months.
Wow.
His wife and my mom couldn't cohabitate. But so 2010, 2011, like I was just fucking pissed off all the time. Like nothing I did was right, at home, and because that's the way that, my mom couldn't wrap her brain around the fact that I was her child, but I was not a child. So it was, you don't know anything, you're just a dumb kid, like it was awful. And so she was sick and she was in pain. So I was a convenient beat up doll.
Gotcha.
So fast forward through 8 years of that shit. I got married, and I married a young woman, and we had a tempestuous love affair.
Can I go back real quick?
Yeah.
So when you were growing up, and you described your mom, I mean, you obviously loved your mom because you were willing, before the motorcycle accident, to go take care of her. So growing up in the abusive house, were there moments where your mom would kind of make you feel loved or make you feel important, or was it just constant?
I mean, like, she had a traumatic brain injury when she was a child.
Okay.
She had a single point hitch trailer crush her skull when she was 6.
Wow.
And they were playing on it, and there was like a log underneath the hitch, and the log fell.
Wow.
She rolled out, and the trailer did this, and then did that. So she had a massive TBI when she was little, and from all reports that I've been able to talk to my aunts and uncles, like, she was never the same.
Yeah,
and
sure.
My aunt, my father's sister, told me after we had separated, I was estranged from my dad at the time of his death, and I was estranged from my mom at the time of her death. Years apart.
Gotcha.
Because I could not, just couldn't do it. And my Aunt Pat was like, sweetheart, we knew that there was something wrong with your mama the first time your daddy brought her around.
Really?
And it was just like, oh my God, So she made herself invaluable, and she put herself in a situation where one would need her.
Yeah.
So, as a kid, I would do anything for any kind of recognition, because my older sister was such a shit show and my younger brother was such a problem. Like I said, it was like, pick me. Like I need. I live here too.
Right.
But this is literally goes through therapy. I've learned, like, this is part of it. Like, oh well, I didn't have to worry about you. Yeah. Well, yeah, you didn't take me to the dentist from the time I was 7 until I was 21. I never went to an optometrist. Like, I have 2 astigmatisms.
No,
I found that shit out at 40 years old.
Wow.
You're just tattooing people.
Right, bro, I mean, like,
that's why it's all crazy. Remember that day in 2015?
I mean, no. So there were moments where I felt loved by her, but it was always conditional.
Yeah.
And so that. There's an anecdote where she would say something like, "Well, sweetheart, I love you, but," and I inherited that, and I remember my ex-wife being like, "Please don't ever say that to me again." Like, you love me, but.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh shit.
Right.
I did this.
You never thought about that.
I never thought about that. I'm really sorry, you know. So yeah, man. I mean, I married a younger woman. We had a tempestuous love affair, and the situation of me being a caregiver at my farm fell apart. My mom allowed my older sister to move in, and it was an instant like. I was like, this is a bad idea. We've already got 2 women living in one house. Like, this is a bad idea. And it was instantly like Macbeth, like Hamlet, like, you know, like pouring poison, like, oh, he's going to leave. You know, you're going to be all alone, all this crazy shit. And so it became explosive, and there was a big fight, and it was awful. And we left. And so I took out a $50,000 line of credit on my shop because we didn't have sheets or pots and pans. Like I had I had a mattress and box springs. I had a book collection because I have a bookworm across my knuckles. I had a gun collection and a tool shop.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Which is fine if you're single.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Not so much. Not so much. You know. Yeah. So I mean, we lived in the shop for 4 days.
Oh wow.
Because we didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So that was an entire life, like, just gone. Wow. Like, I had cared for this property. I was supposed to be the financial end of it. Like, my brothers were both physically more able to handle, you know, logging when we would have to, you know, like, to, you know, basic, you know, land husbandry. Like, but, you know, so, like I said, my baby brother, he bailed after 3 months. Jonesy, you know, my mom had told us that she had created a trust that would allow us to build on this property and to own portions of it. When in fact that was the opposite. She made it to where that would never happen.
Oh wow!
Yeah, dude,
no kidding,
bro. Like, I paid for the mortgage, didn't know it. Jonesy paid money on top of that, so she was making money off of us.
Wow,
in addition to her being indentured servants. I mean, like, at one point, I remember, you know, she would sit in this armchair and smoke and drink coffee, you know, like with fucking Nestle hazelnut creamer. Like, I can't stand the sight of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But she raised her glass and shook it.
Ready
for a refill. You know, shook her ice cubes at me. It was one of the most demeaning moments of my life. I was like, this is where I'm at. So yeah, man. None of that led me to a place of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
But I do want to say this. I think just you doing that, even though you were going through years of, you know, the rage you described and you had the accident, you've always had a big heart.
I tried.
And the fact you'd go and take care of your mom after dealing with all that stuff in your childhood, it shows a lot, because it shows, I think you can be full of rage and an angry individual, but on the flip side of that, you still have that love and compassion because that's your mom. That's the right thing to do. You may not get along with her and she may treat you like shit, but that's your mom. And I think that shows your character, man. That's huge.
Well, I appreciate that, man.
I think. I mean, that's amazing.
I agree, because I've walked away from family that, you know, in times of need, because I'm not dealing with it. And honestly, I don't feel any guilt about it either, right or wrong. But I do recognize, and I tell people this whenever I see it, like, you did the right thing, and it was brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to my aunt about it this summer, and she said, "Look, like, you might be better off financially."
Yeah.
She said, "But that would have been because my mom lived 4 years longer after I left."
Yeah.
And I tried to reconnect with her once we had my daughter.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted her to meet her grandchild because that was the only one she had. Like, my sister had a kid in high school and gave it up for adoption, and she never got to meet it. You know, like.
Yeah.
And my baby brother wasn't going to have kids, you know. I married at 37 years old, so 38. So I wanted her to get to meet my child, and I knew on that day I was like, this is a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, she is just. Yeah.
So did she meet Junie?
She got to meet Junie when Junie was a baby. It was in 2020. It was right after COVID.
Okay.
Right after lockdown.
Gotcha.
And, yeah, I mean, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a good encounter. And so I emailed her and was like, look, like, I forgive you. I forgive my brother. I forgive my sister. Like, stay away from me.
Yeah.
Like, we are done. Like, we're done.
So you were already growing before you started that journey, though, man.
Yeah, you know, trying. I mean, it was
just the fact that you could have that forgiveness and still be full of.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like, I mean, I acknowledge that I was full of anger and resentment, and had nowhere to dump it.
Yeah.
You know, like I had nothing.
Now, would you say that?
Hang on
oh,
a
go ahead.
second, because I want to push the pause button.
That with your mom and trying to reconnect and that kind of falling apart, did you like during your course of your journey, a lot of men self-sabotage, you know, they kind of turn to drugs or alcohol instead of going to talk about their feelings with a therapist or finding a group of men to kind of share you know, their story with. So did you find yourself trying to numb your pain through
For sure,
unhealthy
for
ways?
sure. I mean, while I am still a big proponent of cannabis, I used it medicinally for years as pain medication because I mean I hurt all the time.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. From the accident.
Yeah, when your spine does this, you know,
Right.
like I get dry needled every Monday morning. That's pretty much a complete thoracic, and I go get chiropractic adjustments, and have been massaged extensively. I can't afford it at the moment in this economy.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I used cannabis and I was prescribed a boatload of non-narcotic pain relievers and muscle relaxers and anti-anxiety medication, and my faith in the medical industry at this point is very low because I've been at the expense of it.
Right.
You know, when you are given these substances, you're not taught anything about synergy. You're not talking about anything about how these chemical compounds are going to interact with each other in your body.
Yep.
The emphasis is not on good food and good sleep and grounding and fitness.
They don't make money.
They don't make money like that. They make money if you're fucking miserable.
Yeah.
And you're desperate, and they say, "Oh, well, this is a fantastic product. I've had a doctor tell me, oh, this is a great product." I don't ever want to hear that again.
Yeah.
Don't ever want to hear it again. And I don't trust doctors at this point because, you know, hey man, how's your sleep? Never got asked that question.
Mm-hmm.
Hey man, are you seeing the therapist? Hey man, are you okay?
Right.
You know, like
right.
none of that.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that have happened, especially in my marriage, it's easy to go back now and say, oh well, if I had done this, things would have been different.
Mm-hmm.
And while things may have been different, there's no guarantee that they would have been better.
Right.
Right. But I do recognize fully that just like cannabis off the table, like marijuana off the table, like just the you know, cyclobenzaprine, methocarbamol, Cymbalta, gabapentin, 1,600 milligrams ibuprofen, like just that stuff that I don't take anymore.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what it was like to live with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I carried a lot of shame and a lot of guilt for a long time. That thankfully, my therapist has helped me, you know, kind of make my way through because I've owned it.
Yeah.
You know,
That's big.
I've owned
That's
it,
big.
and it's some of it's not pretty, man. You know, I've made a lot of mistakes, and so there are instances of intense regret and intense shame and guilt over some of the actions that I've made. You know, so yeah, I think especially if you are in a situation similar to mine where you know, like I said, man, you know, it was the 80s. Like, you know, rub some dirt on it.
Yeah.
You know,
Suck it up.
suck it up.
Yeah.
Don't be a pussy.
Don't be a bitch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't be a
Yeah.
bitch. This is what it means to be a man.
You know how many guys say that, man?
Because that's what it was.
It's like the
man.
whole
that
decade.
that was our culture.
Don't be a bitch.
Well, I mean, it's not just that. It was the previous, like for the
For all of
entirety
human
of
history.
human
Yeah,
history.
yeah, yeah.
It was
Good point.
rub some dirt
Good
on it.
point.
Don't be a bitch.
Well, that's why
You
you've
don't
got
cry.
generations with grandfather, dad, and then son
Sure.
carrying it on.
Sure. Well, I mean, and that's ultimately
And
what.
really, the reality is too, we live in a society where it's only really been easy for a short amount of time. Like,
Sure.
you know what I
Sure.
mean? Like air conditioning, deodorant,
Right.
even.
Right. Well,
You
dude,
know?
my grandfather was grown during the Great Depression.
My grandfather
Grown.
too, and
Like-
and that's like the whole thing is like that stuff might have worked in 1892 because it kind of had to.
You had
Right.
to. Yeah,
Right.
you had to.
Like and you know, I found some history books of family, and like you go back and it's like, oh, 1789, these kids, they had 10 kids and 6 of them died.
Right.
You know, that's rough.
That's
like,
rough.
That's a rough
Well,
life.
I mean,
So, yeah, you should probably rub some dirt on it.
When your neighbors are trying to kill you and you don't have enough
That's
food to
it, man. And,
Yeah.
But like times change.
Sure.
And the one thing that happens when times change, times get better, things get easier, society evolves. Now all of a sudden, like, rub dirt on it, like, you're not going to die tomorrow from smallpox coming through, or the Apache taking over your land, right?
Right.
And these things aren't real threats anymore. So now the real threat is emotional and physical. Like, what are we doing within a family home?
Sure.
You know what I mean? And men carrying that forward of, don't cry, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. It's okay to not be fine.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, and there was such a stigma attached to. There was no such thing as men's mental health. That's why
Men's mental health used to be, like, post-World War II, you go to the bowling alley, you throw down some beers, you talk with the boys.
You go to church.
You
drink.
go to church.
You drink.
Right.
you womanize.
You womanize.
Yeah.
You drink yourself silly and hopefully die by 70 before it really catches up.
Right.
Drink.
You know what I mean?
You fight and you fuck.
Yep. That's it.
I watched Sean Ryan podcast.
Yeah.
It was I can't remember his name. He was the gentleman from CAG, from the Delta Force. It was a recent one, and he talked about, number one, he talked about being a real bad alcoholic early. I'm talking like in his early 20s, and he talked about training with these cats that were World War II vets. And they would talk about don't shake the net, and so when they would deploy, like, to Normandy or anywhere, like in the Pacific, especially, the Marines are going in, they would throw a cargo net over the side of the boat, and your ass had to shimmy down that under fire and get in the water or get into another boat. And if you're, they had guys that were literally shitting themselves scared. Don't shake the net, boy. And so the ones that made it out of all that, 9 times out of 10, if you talk to somebody that had a father or a grandfather that went through World War II, and they went through that just insanity, especially in the Pacific, because of the brutality that was present.
For sure.
They don't talk about anything. They do not talk about it.
Yeah.
Because they compartmentalized it.
That's right.
And so he said that these old guys, like, when they would get together, when Delta would get together, they would sometimes coincide with World War II, like, gatherings or whatever, and said that these old men, he would start to see that once they started drinking, like, they would, like, the barriers that
come down.
Like, they would come down, and you'd see guys start to shake and start to become. That's when they would get violent or an emotional outburst, because you're walking around with this pearl of trauma that they've carried and just lacquered layer after layer.
That makes sense.
They're not dealing with anything.
Right.
So that, having the experiences that I did as a child, having a drug addict and alcoholic father, I learned how to drive in the summer between 8th grade and 9th grade, because I spent it with my dad. It was the only summer I ever got to spend with him. I washed dishes and bus tables at my aunt's restaurant, and lived part of the time with her, and then would walk across town to go hang out with my dad, because all I wanted growing up was to hang out with my dad. I have Frank Rosetta prints hanging in my shop, and Frank Rosetta is the reason why I'm a tattooer. He's one of the most prolific illustrators and painters of the latter half of the 20th century. He just happened to paint and draw aliens and barbarians and voluptuous buxom women and monsters. So my parents were bibliophiles growing up. We had hundreds of books growing up. And like all they did was read. That's why I have bookworm tattooed on my knuckles. So those covers of those books were painted in large part by Frank Rosetta and Boris Vallejo, and my dad read a lot of Conan the Barbarian, the originals from the 60s that were reprints from the 30s, and so those covers just knocked me out. And so
between those and Molly Hatchet album,
that's what I'm saying. I have that one hanging in my shop.
Do you really?
Yeah, the Viking.
That's it. I used to look at that album and just lay there.
Just like, whoa! Like, I have a Toshin book that's an incredible publishing house, but it's literally like his entire discography.
That's awesome. His portfolio.
Just everything he's ever done. But those books were really special to me because that's how I got into art. And my mom did the unthinkable when they divorced. Like, if you talk to bibliophiles, like, if you have two bookworms that divorce and someone steals the books,
how are you gonna get through the books?
Wow. Right. Like, so she stole the books. Like all the good ones. And so she put all the best books in one box, and she fucking lost it.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so we would have for like 3 years, I would go through it because there were boxes in the garage, there were boxes in the attic, and so if I found one of these Conan books, it was like a connection to my dad.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so these are not books that an 8-year-old is supposed to read.
That's for sure.
So I got tested, was in the gifted category. I had the reading comprehension of a 30-year-old adult in the 4th grade.
Wow.
So those books became very important. It's the whole reason why I'm a tattooer. I can't remember why I got on this point, but my dad, you spent
one summer with him.
I spent one summer with him. I learned how to drive, and because he was a drunk.
Yeah.
Drunk. I had to get him home.
Yeah.
He had this late model, like mid '60s Ford pickup, kind of square, but not. They were like rounded square. The paint was so thick that it was like that thick, coming off all the way down to bare metal. And I learned how to drive, taking him home from parties that his friends had. So there was one time that he showed any kind of emotion that wasn't anger or violence, where I was with him, and I was 13 years old, 14 years old, and we were at some dude's house, and we got to shoot a fully automatic M16 that day. It was fucking rad. We had a great time. And he got a load on and just started bawling. I mean, like the huckucks.
Yeah.
And I had to drive him home, and the fucking car, the truck, the headlights would go out. Like it had a bad connection. Like so,
when it starts shaking,
right? Yeah, man. So here I am, driving like this, fucking steering wheel like that, with a big spindle on it.
That's awesome.
And it's no headlights. Fuck! Wake up! So I mean, like having lived with my mother almost as long as my father did, and having her place me in this very strange spousal role.
Yeah.
And having been at the effect of her abuse, I understood. And especially now that I've been married, and especially because of some of the things that transpired in my marriage, they say that we marry our parents. As far as your wife is going to most likely share some certain qualities with your mom, and your dad is going to share.
Can't relate to that one, but
but yeah. So I mean, there were certain instances that were really telling. I'm like, holy shit! Well, no wonder he had a fucking load on all the time.
Yeah.
He hurt all the time. So I mean, he got hit on his motorcycle. I got hit on my motorcycle. He lived with my mom. I lived with my mom.
Yeah.
The fact that I'm not a junkie,
right,
at this point in my life, the fact that I take half of my anxiety, dose that I'm supposed to take, I take that and turmeric. Like that's it, all day, every day. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. You've always been a caregiver. Your whole life.
Well, it's called. What was it? I read an article about this the other day. Parentism. I think it's where the parent turns to the child because their emotional needs aren't being met, and they put the child into your parentism. They are putting you in a situation where you are having to. Oh, you grew up so young. You're so far ahead of where you were. Your age. You're older than you really are. All that shit is trauma. So there's an entire echelon of survival mechanisms that come from that.
Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy.
Did you find, and just out of curiosity, well, first of all, did you ever dig into why and how your dad's decline and all that kind of transpired beyond just a car accident? I mean, was there?
Oh yeah, I mean, he, there's an amazing thing that happens when your parents die, especially when they were not very salubrious people.
Sure.
I've spoken to a lot of people that knew my parents before they died, and it was very. It was evident why things turned out the way they did for him, but he made a series of really bad decisions. He married my mother, number one. She cuckolded him multiple times. My mom was a lifetime adulterer.
Okay.
homewrecker type.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, really a difficult thing to wrap your brain around, that your mom is the crazy pussy that nobody could get over. But yeah, she ruined it.
Yeah.
She ruined it.
Do you have empathy now, or?
My father took his own life in 2013.
Okay.
And we were estranged at the time of his death because of his behavior. This was at the height of the opioid epidemic.
Yeah.
And he was neck deep in that.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, he walked, at that point he had a cane, you know, I mean, he drank himself into insensibility, mixed painkillers with booze. It's just a bad scene. And
Yeah.
he showed up at my shop at one point. He was talking about how someone had broken into his house and stolen all of his pills and junkie stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And he was hitting on my female clients.
Oh, come on.
Oh my God. Like, I was like, we are fucking done.
Yeah.
Like, I can't be around you. Like, I started riding a motorcycle because of my dad.
Yeah.
You know, I want, and then because he began riding again later in life, and my mom told a story when my brother and I were little. Like, my dad was so out of it that he would make, you know, visitation date. I'm going to be there at this time, this day, and we would go stand at the end of the driveway, like, Dad's coming.
Anxiously awaiting.
Dad's coming.
Yeah.
We get to go home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, because Nashville wasn't fucking home.
Yeah. You want to go back to the farm.
Yeah, this is. Well, I mean, we didn't have a farm. We had a. You know, my grandparents did.
Oh, okay.
But you know, Pulaski was home.
Well, country. Go back to the country.
Yeah. You know? And my mom said it was one of the. She was like, "This is one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever witnessed in my life. Is you boys waited out there for 8 hours.
Dang.
And it started to rain, and you wouldn't come in the house.
Wow.
And he never showed up. And so my dad would make dates for us to ride motorcycles together. It was one of the, I was like super excited.
Yeah.
And he would do the same thing.
Wow.
And it was just one of those things. It was like, you're a fucking piece of shit, man. Like, but years later, experiencing all that I did, I have an immense sense of empathy and understanding.
Yeah.
Because of who and what he was dealing with, that I was utterly unaware of.
Right.
Because, I mean, how do you tell that? I mean, like, as much of, I mean, when you go through a divorce now, there's a class that you have to take, and they tell you, don't disparage the other parent. Don't date immediately, and don't expose your children to this person. You know, like,
Sure.
We'll get into that later. But as much as my dad and my mother hated each other, and they hated each other, he would, your mom's a crazy bitch, but he wouldn't go into specifics. Like he spared us that.
Yeah.
And there's almost a desire that I wish he had as an adult, like being like, okay, like, tell me what happened.
Yeah.
Tell me your side of this, because I grew up hearing my mom's side about it, and it was, oh, well, he beat me, and he cheated on me, and he told me he was going to kill me, and all this crazy shit. And you're like, as a child, you're like, oh my God, this person's so terrible. Like, oh my God, like. And then when I moved into to take care of her, all of that, revamped. Revved back right back up. What a terrible person my father was, and that she was so angry that we would choose to spend time with him. And come to find out, as I did after she passed, like, well, fuck, there's no reason. Like, there's a reason why he did terrible things. It's because you drove him to it.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what it was like being married to you when you were young and spry.
Yeah. Right.
Especially, given the understanding that, like I said, she had a penchant for married men.
Yeah.
So it was just a mess.
Yeah.
I can't imagine living through it. Living through my own mess that I made, and the things that I've done, the mistakes that I've made. I can't imagine that, because it was crazy as a child, we didn't understand why, but we understood that it was just nuts. So, my grandfather was, like I said, he was born in 1906, so he was 80. By the time that we came along, he'd already helped raise 2 sets of grandkids.
Yeah.
So he and my grandmother were not all that thrilled to run what they called the daycare. Especially with my baby brother being extremely, mentally unstable. But he was pretty much the only positive male role model I had in my life. And so, I mean, we're talking about a guy that went from, his father owned a general store in rural Mississippi, and his mother owned several small farms in rural Mississippi. He went to the Navy, did 4 years in the Navy in between World War I and World War II, and he got out and started working for Boeing, building airplanes.
Oh, wow.
And he went in a very short amount of time from riveting wings and tails for Vultee, which was Boeing's wing and tail division, to being a plant manager. And lo and behold, World War II breaks out. He was one of the first industrialists to bring women into the workforce.
No kidding.
Tom Brokaw interviewed him for The Greatest Generation.
That's incredible.
Yeah, dude. Tom Brokaw sat in our house.
Oh, that's incredible, man.
My grandfather called him son. I said, Mr. Wallace, how do you feel about bringing women into the workforce? And he goes, son, I don't know about you, he said, but my wife can get more done with a hank of wire and string than most men can with a toolbox.
That's
you know,
awesome.
Because my grandmother was a homemaker.
Yeah.
She wasn't a fucking housewife. Like, she kept... If the
Back then, women were home.
oh my God, dude! Like she was a G.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like she.
I was reading that about this. Oh man, what was it? They were manufacturing watches in Colorado. And World War II breaks out. They have to bring all the women in. Their production went through the roof. Like they were like, "Hey guys, slow."
Yeah, whoa! Because they're not going to smoke cigars and drink beers.
It's like they got little fingers.
Yeah.
And they're detail oriented.
Yeah.
And then you got guys like, smoking cigarettes and like, it's a watch. Can you believe what the battle axe did yesterday?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like these.
But so I mean, you know, that was one of the things that I remember when she passed. My uncle, who's a piece of work in himself, but he was like, my mother was a homemaker.
Yeah.
Like she was not a housewife. She kept 3 kids clothed and fed and washed and in school and made sure homework was done.
All the meals.
Oh yeah. I mean, and my grandparents were old school men. Like they grew acres of garden.
That's awesome.
All summer long. Like when I was a kid, we'd wake up and then we'd go to my mom and dad's house and we'd eat breakfast, and then we ran 18 laps around my grandparents' backyard. It was a mile. We ran a mile. My grandfather and I would walk a mile around the neighborhood, and then he would go. He became a trainer after he retired.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
I mean, back in the 70s.
Yeah, that's incredible. Or was he a Jack LaLanne?
No. My dad made Jack LaLanne look like a bitch. He was.
You put that on the t-shirt.
That's awesome.
He was the instructor for the arthritis for the water exercise class.
Oh, wow.
So 3 days a week.
That's amazing.
He would do 2 classes in the morning. So we would. My brother and I would run a mile. Dado and I would walk a mile. Well, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we'd go to the Y, and he would swim a mile.
Nice.
And then he would teach 2 classes. And then we'd come home, we'd have lunch, and we'd take a nap. And then from 2 in the afternoon until dark, we all worked in the garden. Like that was it. Like turnips and tomatoes and corn and peas and okra and peppers and you name it, beans. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I grew up. My grandmother would make salsa and pecani sauce and tomatoes and jams and all that stuff. But we were treated like this extra thing.
Yeah.
It was always it's I love you, but.
Yeah. Even from your grandfather?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, once again, he was as far removed as you could get from an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
So he didn't talk to us like we were children.
Yeah.
My brother and I. And he was in the fucking Navy, so I mean, he was a bare knuckle boxer. He was a boiler tender first class.
Oh, wow.
Guess where they fight in the Navy?
Yeah.
In the boiler room.
Exactly.
Right. So yeah, his nose was crooked, and he talked to us like little adults.
Yeah.
So we would get 3 weeks of summer vacation, and like I said, he grew up on a farm. So after 3 weeks, he would drive us to whatever school we were going to, and get all of our textbooks. School started, Jack, like 3 weeks. He's like, you don't need 3 months. You're not bringing in a crop. That's why you have a 3-month summer vacation. It's because you're going to bring in a crop. You're not bringing in a crop.
Yeah.
You're going to learn algebra. Not that ever worked. I mean, math and I are not friends. But
me either.
Yeah, man. Yeah, dude. He was a piece of work, man.
Huh.
It was very hard to measure up. I mean, and my grandma took me into her bedroom one time, and she had on her bedside table, on the bottom drawer, were all of her children's report cards from fucking kindergarten to graduation.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
Yes, and so she would. Oh, it's September. Well, your Uncle Richard made this on his report card in September of 1949.
Gee. Wow.
You're not measuring up.
Wow, man.
Yeah, man.
No pressure.
Yeah, no shit. No pressure. My grandmother looked me dead in the eye one day and said, "What have you done to justify your existence?"
No way.
Yeah, man.
It's not a bad question. That's a bad question for a
fucking
for an
8-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bad question.
Like, I think that's an introspective question. What have I done today? Right?
To justify your.
I think you did a lot. You ran a mile. You walked a mile. You went out in the garden. You did a lot.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, it is.
So, I mean,
Are they from this area?
no, they were from deepest, darkest Mississippi.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
There's a different
80
culture there,
miles,
too.
80 miles north of the Gulf.
Yeah.
40 miles north of the Gulf.
Okay. That's a different world, too.
Yeah, they left like. You ever see Officer and a Gentleman?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so my grandmother
He's a
worked.
huge Richard Gere fan. You hear that? His ass was amazing.
My,
I want your PR, man.
You were like under the table.
Oh yeah.
my grandmother worked in a denim factory.
Okay.
She was the only person in her family that had a job during the Depression. Like, she kept her family alive. She dropped out of school in the 10th grade. Yeah. My grandmother had a bookcase. It was like 15-foot tall, floor-to-ceiling bookcase. It was full of two things. It was Encyclopedia Britannicas that my grandfather had to have a fresh set. Like, it was
Really?
It was a thing. Like, if the new edition came out, got it. And she had it was floor-to-ceiling of Reader's Digest books, and she would give me books every year.
Yeah.
For every holiday. And she would look me dead in the eye. Nobody can ever take an education away from me. It's one of the only things that
Good advice.
Oh my God. She was a battle axe. She was a mean old bitch. She was crazy as hell.
Yeah.
She got lithium poisoning in the 70s.
Oh,
she
you're
got
kidding. She was
yeah.
taking lithium.
Oh yeah. At my grandfather's insistence.
Yeah.
Back when husbands could tell their doctors, hey,
Yeah, they had to.
up on
Yeah.
dosage. Yeah. So she insisted that I read. We'd have book reports in the summertime. I mean, like, it was
Wow.
Bible study, like all
Yeah.
that stuff, man.
Was she really religious?
She was a Southern Baptist to the bone. She would go and she would get her little hair set, and she would go to church every Sunday. Now, she didn't require that we go.
Oh, really?
We went to an Episcopalian church.
Okay.
That was my mom's denomination.
Gotcha.
But yeah, man. I forgot where I was going with that. Yeah, Officer and a Gentleman. So my grandfather got out of the Navy, and he showed up, and the foreman at her factory had basically been putting advances to her. Like, she was like, he's not taking no for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so apparently my grandfather went and whipped this man's ass and got her paycheck out of his wallet. Like,
Wow.
This is how much she's owed.
Nice.
And they left Mississippi with a carpet bag and $50.
No kidding.
And because he had a job at the Volti factory
Yeah.
in LA.
Yeah.
So they got on a train with $50 in a suitcase.
You know that movie, Officer and Gentleman, is probably the most accurate movie about the Navy ever made.
I didn't know that, but
OCS is pretty much like that.
Sure.
Really?
And they could not film it in Pensacola because the city did not want a black eye.
Right.
So they didn't film it there.
Wow.
I went to OCS in
Sure.
Pensacola.
Sure.
And it was very, very accurate.
My brother was stationed down there.
Okay, yeah.
That's where he met my surrogate brother Jonesy.
No kidding. Okay, yeah.
They
It's a fun town.
That's fun.
Oh yeah.
I've driven down there a couple times.
It's fun.
to pick him up and then bring him back.
Yeah,
But
it's a fun town.
that's how Jonesy came to this part of the country, man. Like,
Oh, no kidding.
yeah, man.
Huh.
He was in the air wing, and my brother had been up before tribunal for malingering because he had forged a superior officer's signature for a 96-hour leave.
No kidding.
I mean, got
Wow.
caught. Oops. My brother was a shitbird. It was the military term.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. So Jonesy didn't have anywhere to go. I think it's Memorial Day weekend in Pensacola. It's
Yeah.
like the gay 4th of July. Or
Oh
whatever.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So
Richard Gere was there.
there were apparently
Have you seen his hips?
several years worth of incidences where aspiring young naval officers and Marines would go out and bait these boys and wind up in a ditch.
Oh my God.
Yeah, bro,
Interesting.
Like, 'cause some of those brother bros don't mess around.
Wow.
So they locked the entire base down for 96 hours. Like, you can go anywhere in the world you want to go,
No, nothing.
but if you don't have somewhere to go, your ass is staying on base.
Yeah, wow.
So Jonesy was sitting on the porch at barracks, just like,
Cool.
because he didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
So he came up and never went home. Like, he was from Southern California.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
Mid California.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. He was in the air wing. He made night vision goggles, worked on helicopters.
Oh, cool.
And there was a float that was about to deploy to Afghanistan, and they all went out the night before and just destroyed like 4 bars. Like,
Nice.
and all of them got arrested. So, like, this entire fucking
Sounds like it's cool.
yeah. this whole battalion got decimated, and because
McGuire's was one of them.
they had to be in country for their trials.
Yeah.
So the camp commandant was like, he lined everybody up that was left. He goes, you're going, you're staying. You're going, you're staying. So Jonesy ended up being a 240 gunner
No kidding.
in Korangal province in Afghanistan. Like, when it was hot.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
No kidding.
Yeah. First time I ever met him, he was running around my front yard, drunk as hell, with a jar full of a mason jar full of lightning bugs, going, their butts light up. He's from California.
You've never seen lightning
bugs.
bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. That's awesome.
So all that said, so like, okay, so you had a positive male influence.
Yeah.
Was
That was
there any? I always said this. So like, I kind of grew up, you know, with a tumultuous relationship with my dad, and he wasn't abusive, but he was apathetic and drunk, right? And that did its own damage. I always looked for surrogate dads everywhere I went.
Sure.
Right. So I had my first mentor, and I'm like, that's my dad. You know, get a great boss. That's my dad.
Right.
And I don't think it was a conscious thing, but I think subconsciously I was looking for that out of people.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, there's an entire generation of us that's endemic. Yeah, man. I totally get that.
So is there anybody like that kind of sticks out, that kind of, because you course corrected, and I don't think it was by accident. Like you could have had a path that went
Yeah.
a million different directions.
I mean,
but there's something in you that's like at least soul seeking, and even before you started therapy, you were making moves that like damaged people don't typically do. So I mean, like, how does that come about?
It wasn't necessarily. I mean, there were a couple guys that, you know, I was mentored by a guy to learn how to tattoo, and then he was not. Kendall was an amazing human being, and I miss him. He's been dead for a long time. Couldn't tattoo worth a damn. Like, he wasn't a moral compass or
I got you.
anything remotely like that. I had a couple guys in this business that were kind of mentor-ish, but not in that way. My mom, I hate to say the word dated when you're talking about 50s and 60s, but you know, she was in a relationship with a guy named Richard that was like a stepdad at a certain point. You know, like you could tell that he had been through the ringer and he had made some bad decisions. And you know, when the way my shop came about, I bought a building with my former boss, and we became business partners, and we worked together for 3 years in that capacity. And in reality, it was still his business.
Sure.
You know, like and that's one of the reasons why we split, was that there was no division of the proceeds. You know, I still worked for a percentage as an owner. Like, it was crazy.
Oh, that's crazy.
It's nuts.
No equity.
What's the fucking ever? And he tried to gaslight me into the whole, like, oh, well, you just own part of the building. It's like, we have articles of confederation, asshole.
Yeah, dog. This is
called the LLC that we created. It says to operate a business within. So Rich and my mom, like, we bought this building, Ben and his wife and I, and I guess Richard had gotten screwed out of his financial planner business in the late 90s, early 2000s, like hostile takeover kind of situation. Like, look, the clients are mine, the equity's mine, like, you're fucked, you know. And he didn't do anything about it.
Yeah. Like,
it was one of those that came from his protege, and it hurt him so much that he just let it go. He just let it go.
Wow.
And so I got kind of like whittled down and you know, from square peg and round hole into, you know, round peg, sort of, by them.
Sure.
They're like, if you don't fight this, then you're going to regret this for the rest of your life. Yeah. And it's been a kind of an area of resentment in my life until now.
Okay.
Because I'm 9 years into owning my own business under my own banner, which is I'm very proud of.
That's incredible.
It's huge.
That's incredible, man.
Thank you.
Huge. And people don't understand too, unless you own a business.
It's tough, man.
You don't understand. People. We had this the other day. It's just a shitty example. Good friends. They know our business ebbs and flows. It's a service business, right? Like, and it's based on disposable income.
Sure.
It ebbs and flows. It's been a hard year. They know this. We've talked about it. We've talked about frustrations. They're like, well, we want you to do a huge party for us. I'm like, okay. They're like, don't give us discounts. Just send us, you know, the invoice of what it'll be. I do, and they're like, oh.
Right.
I was really hoping we could keep it around this much. So like a 75% discount. I'm like,
No, that's not realistic.
It's not how it works.
No, I mean, and that's the thing. My brother Doug, like I said, he owns several businesses. He owns a wellness clinic here in town called Relive, and they do injectables, and they do IV treatment, and they do blood work, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And he's talked about this where people, oh, I want to support you, and they want a deal.
Yep.
And
I want to support you as long as
it's conditional. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I mean, owning your own business is no picnic, as you know, and there's no hours, there's no holidays, there's I mean, it's what's required to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
So we fought, my partner and I, we fought for 18 months, and it was this malingering, muckraking, you said this, you did this. Like, it was one of those experiences where I did everything I could to be as professional as possible. I also carried a gun every day to work because I didn't know if this was going to be the day. He was known for being violent, and he was known for, he well trained in some pretty nasty martial arts. I'd seen him hurt people.
Yeah.
I'd heard stories about him throwing folks down the stairs, and he was a piece of work.
Yikes.
And I never knew when he was going to show up, so it was one of those things, like, it was like, okay, like, today could be our day. I'm not being exaggerating, I'm not aggrandizing or grandstanding by any means. It was a very crazy time.
And that sounds kind of like your childhood. Today could be
for sure.
day.
For sure.
You're reliving that through
man. I mean, it was, and it, I going through all that I've gone through, I tend to turtle. Like, I withdraw, and I push people away, and I isolate.
Yeah.
Like those are my main coping mechanisms.
Yeah. Because
that's called insulation. I'm going to keep myself safe,
protected,
and I know that you're not going to be able to hurt me.
Yeah.
So, after we managed to go to mediation a year to the day after we offered, like, hey man, we need to go to mediation. Like, he tried to file for injunctive relief. And the judge is like, y'all are tenants in common, like, you both own the same amount of the building. Like, you can't tell him what to do, he can't tell you what to do. Like, you guys need to get a mediator. So a year of them taxing every legal expense that they could. I spent $46,000 in 1 year on an attorney. It was disgusting. I made $46,300. So I walked with $300.
Wow.
Yeah, man, it's like, man, we go to dinner, like.
Not in Franklin though.
Yeah, not anymore.
No. Go to Columbia.
Right. Afterwards, when I was closing on the property on my own, I had to go to my closing attorney, and he apparently had, he had agreed for me to buy him out by paying him a percentage of the equity that we had accrued.
That you didn't get.
Right. That I didn't get. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Wouldn't get any of that. That the property had accrued.
That's right.
So he agreed, and the day before, apparently, he had shown his ass with his attorney and fired his attorney because if there's one coefficient on earth that's going to get paid,
it's always the attorney.
It's the attorney.
That's right.
So they had it written into the settlement that funds would be paid to the attorney because he hadn't been paying his lawyer.
Oh my gosh.
I had been paying mine as I went. And we subpoenaed his bank records for 5 years, and my attorney's like, I can't find, like, it's $200 here, $100 there, like, and it's from like 5 different bank accounts, like, it's never consistent, like, so they must have a deal worked out because I know how much I'm charging.
Yeah.
So the lawyer was going to get paid, and then whatever was left would go to my ex-partner. And so he fired my attorney, thinking that would alleviate him having to pay his attorney. So the day I closed, my attorney calls me and says, we've got a problem. He's like, no, we don't. Not today.
No. Yeah.
So he's like, well, this is what's happened. And so their attorney is there, and he's threatening to come down there. I'm like, let him. Because I have Williamson County sheriff deputies that live in my house. I'm like, let him come down there and show his ass. He will go to jail. So their attorney came to get the check from the closing attorney. And deal was done. Property was in my name. And this man showed up, and he was the color of the lid of your coffee cup, and he was white.
Really?
And livid. And he said, Mr. Bledsoe, I want to tell you something that I've never done this to an opponent, essentially. I can't remember the legal term for it. He said, I'm sorry.
Wow.
He said, I'm really sorry. He said, those people were the worst clients I've ever had in my life. And they were some of the most immature and petty vindictive people I've ever been around in my life, and this is what they did to me. He's like, so I just want to tell you that I'm sorry, and that it was just business, and I really wish you the best. And that was one of those things where I was like, well, I'll be damned.
Thank you.
So, but Richard was kind of a mentor. He made a lot of mistakes in his life. He was divorced, and his child lived in a different state. I'm divorced. My child lives in a different state. And I took care of my sick mom. He took care of my mom. But I think I looked more for like big brother figures than I did dad figures, because I was dads were suspect. Dads will fuck you up. Dads will leave. Dads will abandon. I definitely because I was forced to grow up very early. All of my friends were mostly older than me anyway. I gravitated towards individuals that were more experienced and had a little bit more under their belt. It's one of the reasons why I didn't serve was that I had a pathological problem with male authority. It's like, well, who the fuck are you? You're not going to tell me how to do anything. You hadn't been around. Fuck off. I am more of the inclination to serve now at 45 years old with spinal injuries than I was when I was 18, because I had such a problem with that whole structure. I get it. I totally understand that. I made some bad decisions because part of what I didn't know what a red flag was until very recently in my life. I'd be like, well, this doesn't feel right, but this is what we're doing. I was very trusting, very naive in a lot of ways. I've had some bad experiences with people that I brought into my home. There's one guy that he and his wife divorced. He got it was the summer of 2009. He got hit on his motorcycle 3 weeks before I did.
Come on.
Oh man, in the same group of friends.
Wow.
Yeah, dude. Broad daylight. Woman was drunker than hell. He did a high side that flipped over a Cadillac, and he ran and hit his lower back on the curb.
Ooh.
And it
Folded him up.
It fucked him up. He ended up having to have surgery years later because it made scar tissue on his femoral artery.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, it took almost all of the blood flow out of his leg. He damn near died.
That's crazy.
But he, afterwards, he didn't have anything. I gave him a bed, I gave him a chest of drawers, gave him a dog, all this crazy shit, and
Gotta have a dog.
he turned out to not be a good investment. And what's crazy is that he and my baby brother got real close, and then apparently his wife was like, look, you got to choose.
Okay.
Yeah, this is not healthy. You guys got to go.
Wow.
It's either him or me.
Wow.
So,
It's interesting to me that, I think Steve said it earlier, you've always kind of been a caregiver, but as now you're addressing past traumas, you're growing, you're working on yourself, you've got this book that you've written to kind of manage this, you're going to therapy. Do you find yourself now mentoring people or being that big brother to somebody else because of all this?
I typically keep, I haven't in about 4 or 5 months, I typically keep copies of this in the shop.
Yeah.
And I talk with my clients, and we have real conversations.
Yeah.
It's my version of the tattoo shop is like, my grandfather's version of the barbershop.
Sure.
It's before the term inclusive got thrown around. Anybody can come to my shop.
Yep.
I don't care. We don't care about your color or your sexual orientation or what you do for a living. None of that shit matters.
Yeah.
As long as you're a good person, we enjoy having you.
I like
and so I have given away boxes of this thing. Rather than go buy my book on Amazon.
That's right, yeah.
It's like, I think that this would help you.
Yeah. That's
So whether or not it's been received as a mentoring kind of situation, or whether or not it's been looked at as a big brother, I've had multiple young men, especially younger guys, come back and be like, thank you.
That's cool.
Thank you, because this helped.
That's really cool.
Because the focus on the book is literally these are the things that you've gone through. what are you doing about that?
Yeah.
You know, what changes are you making in your life? Because there's nothing more clear as of a definition of insanity as doing the same shit over and over again and hoping for a different result.
Yeah.
So I kind of started putting it together from that perspective. Like, okay, like nothing changes if nothing changes.
Yeah.
Well, what are some changes that I can make? And it starts off with the mind, body, and spirit triangle. Like, this is it. Like, you have the one thing that you can change are your physical habits. What are you eating?
Yeah.
How do you sleep? Are you doing any kind of breath work? Do you know what happens when you get into really cold water? You know, like, do you work out? Do you know that there are more potent antidepressants from working out than you can take?
That's
you know, so and as I started doing this research, I started doing these things. Like I saw an interview with a Delta Force psychologist, and he's like, "Look, I talk to guys that go at the tip of the spear and have to do terrible things to other human beings, and the biggest thing that I tell them is like, okay, well, you can't sleep. It's totally normal. You want to sleep? Walk 15,000 steps in a day. You'll sleep.
You'll sleep.
You know." And so I started doing that.
Yeah.
And I'd been a fan of Wim Hof, you know, the crazy Polish breathing guy, for years.
Yeah, he's
because
wild, man.
he's
Have you
amazing.
seen this guy?
Wim Hof
This
is
guy's wild.
so.
And his diaphragm is so on point. Like, I mean, when he creates a vacuum, I mean,
But it's
belly
like
button touches spine.
Hicks and Gracie. I mean, like, you can see he can move his abdominal muscles independently.
Wow, that's crazy.
Amazing. His wife committed suicide back in the 80s, and he kind of lost it. And he went on this healing journey, learned ancient Ayurvedic, he learned Sanskrit, and so he started looking at all of these yogic practices. And so breath work is, you can start and stop processes in your body strictly by your breathing, which is fundamentally kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I'd done that for years. I started doing it every day. He started talking about going into the cold. I couldn't afford it, still can't afford a cold plunge.
Yeah.
But you know, you can get into a cold shower, and a cold shower in January in Tennessee is about 30 degrees.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Cool.
So I started doing that, and I worked on my mobility, and I started working on with your 4-day split that I got ages and ages ago.
Probably time for me to write you a new one.
Maybe.
That's a little long. Yeah. I need to do that.
But that's what I do. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I do a modified version of it.
Yeah.
So as I started focusing on these physical things, I started to see benefits in my mental state. And as I started to see benefits in my mental state, I started to gain some spiritual traction.
Mm-hmm.
And once I began to see some changes in how I identify and view the universe and how I interact with the world at large, I started to see changes in my body. So I mean, it's this triangular chain. It's all connected. And so, you know, back during when my ex-wife was pregnant with our child, she gained a good amount of weight. I gained 60 pounds. You know, I was a fat fuck, man. We ate like shit, and we were both miserable people. And during lockdown, I will give credit where it's due. She came to me and said, "Hey, I'm tired of being this way. I'm tired of feeling like shit. Tired of looking like shit. I'm going to start taking walks in the morning, and I want you to come with me." And that was the start. It was 4 years ago now. And we both lost a bunch of weight, and started going more towards, okay, like, well, if I can lose some weight, then I can, you know, maybe start to get to be stronger. If I can get to be stronger, then maybe I can, you know, start working on my mind. You know? So it's been a long process, and it's been one of the most rewarding things in my life. You know, I mean, like, I wake up every single morning, and as soon as I'm conscious, like that fuzzy, not quite sleep, not quite awake, I start thanking God for everything that I have.
That's awesome. That's amazing. That is amazing.
And that is, thank you for allowing me to wake.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to be alive. Thank you for my daughter. Because at the end of the day, she's literally the only thing I have at this point. Like, yes, I own a commercial property, and yes, I have a business that's doing well, and I have people that care about me. That's my child.
Yeah.
And she's the most important thing in my life. And so not for nothing, she is the motivation for me to get up and to choose to be happy every single day. I wake up and I say, thank you for my health. Thank you for the fact that I'm able to say thank you. Thank you for the ability to walk, and just I go down the list every single day.
Yeah.
And I go from the things that I'm thankful for and the people that I'm thankful for to just sitting in that gratitude. Because it could have been a whole lot worse. I know people that have been hit by drunks that had legs removed. I know people that got hit by drunks that didn't make it. I know people that have been through half of the stuff that I've been through that have eaten a bullet. I am thankful every second of every day for everything.
You are very strong.
Well, thank you.
And I don't mean strength like when people think of strength, like, oh, you can take on 10 guys. I mean, just, in my opinion, the mental component to wellness is the hardest component, especially for most men.
Well, that's why we start off.
Gratitude is hard.
Gratitude is,
Body,
it is.
Mind,
Right.
and spirit, because you can't start off with your brain.
You
can't.
No.
It's only when you can see that the 1,000 little things that you do throughout the course of your day that can change your physique or your physical capacity. It's only when you see that proof.
Right.
And then that's when I used to see somebody that was yoked out or well sculpted and
Like Chance.
right, that it was vanity, and it's not vanity.
That's you.
There can be, but it's discipline.
No, I was going to hail that word. I love that word.
Discipline.
Yeah, man. Love that word.
And it's dedication. And it's, yes, I mean, is there a satisfaction to say, oh man, I look great. I feel good, but it's, okay, if I give this true effort, nobody gave this to me.
Yeah.
I did this. And so that's incredibly empowering.
The thing with the physical side, though, I think, too, you can almost create an imposter syndrome. You neglect the mental side. You build yourself up.
If you
only do one, right?
Yeah.
That's why that's why it's a triangle.
It is.
Be all three.
But a lot of people focus on, and I'm speaking about myself here, focus on the physical side. We could even get into tattoos with this, but it's a way to keep people away.
Sure.
Don't mess with me. I'm dangerous because I don't want to work on myself. I think it takes real discipline to sit down and really, journal, have a morning routine, be grateful, really try hard to be kind, and I'm gonna swing this another way too. I mean, how many dads out there that are divorced that have, the custody where they don't see their child much, really give a shit? They're not present. They're not doing anything. And that society sees the man, in my opinion, in a divorce like, oh, what did he do wrong?
Yeah.
And they're not there for their kid. And just the fact that you have overcome all of this and your daughter is your biggest inspiration, that says a lot, man. That says a whole hell of a lot.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's a good archetype, and especially for anybody. And look, I mean, even if you're happily married and you live in the burbs and you got it made, you go to a job that you hate, sitting in a cubicle every day, can be just as life-sucking.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Any challenge out there.
Yeah, 100%.
But if you have that mind, spirit, body connection where you're, look, I'm going to put in a little effort on my body. Oh, shit, that feels good. Let me reflect on that. I mean, at a certain point, all those elements start kind of jiving and coming together. And
it makes you a better parent.
Oh, 100%.
Because you're working on yourself.
And that's the thing is and this is where, I'll segue into this, is that, in my marriage, and I'm not interested in defaming my ex-wife by any stretch of the imagination, but there was a component in my marriage where, and I don't know if it was out of fear or a lack of knowing what to do, or I wasn't allowed to be separate from my ex-wife and my child. Like, it was, we have a baby and I need your help. There was no garage time. There was no gym time. I could play video games after they went to bed. That was about it. So not having an outlet for things, which is now, like, if you're upset, go throw some iron around. If you need to cool down, go take a walk. That was another component of it that I was not allowed to disengage, which is, I was taught if you're in a fight, try not to get into a fight. Try to walk away.
Right.
And that was just not an option. So understanding my behaviors when confronted with those triggers has been a big task, and admitting my wrong and admitting my portion of those things has been terrifying. self-awareness is terrifying.
It is. It
Self-awareness is
And
tough.
that's
It
the
is very
reason.
tough.
Yeah.
It
That's
is
the
very
reason
tough.
why people use drugs.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why people
There's no doubt. None
don't
doubt.
numb it out.
Yeah.
Because and that's the reason why fuck, I'm not going to therapist. Fuck that. You know, like
What I find though is which I've always been active and fit, sometimes more than others, but this year I just started hitting it hard, and what I found is I also quit drinking heavily, and haven't drank in months and months and months now, and that's when I really ramped up exercise. I can't think about anything else while I'm exercising, and then afterwards I've got so much clarity, right? Like the things that I thought were big things, I'm like,
Yeah.
most stupid.
most of the suffering is in your life is not as a result of the things that happen to you. It's as a result of how you respond.
How you're responding. Yes.
And then once I learned that,
Yep.
you know, coming from a very reactive position, you know, because that was me. Like, oh, well, if you have a problem and you broach it in a way that I'm not comfortable with, then that means you're attacking me.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's not a healthy thing.
I feel like that a
Yeah.
lot, and
Yeah.
I still struggle with that, and I have to work on this even with my wife. And we have a great relationship, and we're very understanding towards each other. But if she's angry, I still go right back to that little kid, and I'm like, oh, she's mad at me.
She's
It's
mad
my
at me.
fault. The whole
Right.
world's falling apart. The whole house is going to crumble. I've got to do something, and it's
Yeah.
either like I'm going to go sit and like try to stay out of the way, or I'm going to go and like follow her around being mad.
Right.
Well, that's not healthy.
No. Well, I mean, I used to, you know, you okay? Are we okay?
Are we okay? Are we
Yeah.
fine? Do you like me?
Yeah. I would say I love you. You know, like,
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah,
That's-
like
that's
because
me.
it's a fear of abandonment.
Yeah,
man.
It's a fear of conflict
Yeah.
because when conflict, dude, I watched my mom try to kill my father with a butcher knife.
Wow.
Like, yeah, man. I mean, I watched my dad beat the shit out of my mom as a kid, and
Yeah.
I watched my mom try to murder him. If it
Yeah.
wasn't for a belt loop, getting caught on a drawer pull,
It would have been over.
like,
Well,
yeah, man. I mean, as a little kid. So when you have that in the back of your brain,
exactly.
anytime, you know, if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Yeah.
Like, that's a thing.
That's a thing, man.
You know,
And
so-
it's a scary thing. But I do find that as I'm pushing myself harder as an individual, especially physically, mentally, like follow suit. I'm
For
like,
sure.
Okay, well, those are big deals.
Yeah,
right?
well, it's the second leg of that tripod.
Yeah.
Like I said, man, like, and so it's been, I'm in the same boat. Like, you know, I mean, the last 2 years, you know, my daughter and my ex-wife remarried, and they moved to Oklahoma. And this time 2
Where
years ago, they were in Cache, outside of Fort Sill,
Okay, yeah,
middle of nowhere, Wichita Mountains.
Yeah.
And
that's up there too.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was devastated. You know, there wasn't anything I could do. I mean, they got married, and you know, and like I can't fight this. I don't have an
That's
attorney. I don't have the money for an attorney. And I had to make a very clear decision. I mean, I had a random client email me on Instagram and was like, "Hey, man, I just want to let you know, like, there's a huge difference in who you are than who you used to be." And I'm like, "Well, yeah." You know, and he's like, "Well, what happened?" I'm like, "Well, I lost a lot of shit. You know, like I went through some pretty heinous stuff, man. Like I made a lot of mistakes. But now, you know, like I because of the injuries that I have, I don't want to be the dad that can't pick up his little girl.
Yeah,
You know,
1000%.
God forbid, if there's an emergency, I don't want to be the man that can't lift up his child.
That's right.
So my driveway is kind of slanted, so I do 40-pound kettlebell carries and
Nice.
50-pound sandbag carries and drags.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, like it's. I want to be able to be there for her.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to dance at her wedding. You
That's
know,
right.
I want to you know, run around the backyard and play. I don't want to be like, okay, and it sucks because I have to go. You know, like I said, I got to get dry needled. I got to get adjusted with the chiropractor, and I have to sit on an ice pack. You know, like
For sure.
But I'll walk around now with that 50-pound sandbag, and I'm like, this is what it felt like to walk.
Just normally.
Just with the
Yeah.
gut, you know, like
Yeah.
this is what it was like to walk. Well, no wonder you fucking hurt all the time.
Yeah.
Jesus,
This is
you know.
heavy.
So, yeah, man. I mean, like that, dialing that in and being like, okay, like, well, I know what, you know, like you said earlier, I didn't have a mentor to kind of show me the way for this, so I had to look at things and say, well, this didn't work.
Yeah.
Qualitatively or quantitatively, like, okay, like, I need to
Like,
try
so you
something
were
else.
raised a bookworm, so you were a thinker probably
Yeah,
early on.
yeah.
So like you've got, I mean, Conan and The rest is male role model. Punch the camel and move on.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, if all else fails, man, you know.
But like, I think that makes a difference, though. I was Tolkien.
Yeah,
reader.
dude, I read The Hobbit when I was 5.
I read it when I was 6.
Yeah.
That was the first
too.
chapter book I read was The Hobbit. And I love those guys, man. And I'm like, oh yeah, wizards. They're so smart. Yeah. They're some smart dudes. So I do think that being a studious person probably helps more than someone without those faculties. Like I tell people, you got to read something. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I have over 3,000 books, man. I mean, like it's
I don't have that. I don't have that.
Yeah.
No, I don't need.
I've got 3. No.
Coloring books.
I have coloring books too, man. I mean, when my daughter shows up, we'll color all day.
Nice, man.
I got a colored
Well,
book.
tell us about your book right here.
Well, I started jiu-jitsu. One of my clients and now one of my absolute best friends on the face of the planet is a man named Ray Casillas. Ray has owned Tennessee Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Spring Hill for 12, 15 years, I think. He's been doing jiu-jitsu since 1997.
Nice.
Lifelong wrestler. He's originally from Colorado. And he came in, and it was one of those moments where it's like, this is the hand of God.
Yeah.
You know, like it was spring, maybe winter of 2021. You know, my marriage was failing, and I was literally like a castaway, like no life preserver. Like I just don't know what the fuck's going on. And so I started working on him, and his grandmother married an Apache. Like he was like very much so like old school, like warrior culture. And so I did this Native American headdress skull with crossed tomahawks on his back.
That's
Full back, big cover up. And he is he's a Tier 1 combatives instructor. He's the combatives director at 5th Special Forces Group in Fort Campbell.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He's a civilian. He's a former Ranger. And so he was like, you need to do jiu-jitsu. And I haven't been in some months because I got hurt because I'm old and I have spinal injuries. You know, the whole point of jiu-jitsu is to break your posture. My posture's already broken.
Sure.
So, but it's that avenue that I needed. It's something that you can literally walk in and you hang up everything in your life that's not jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
For an hour.
I can only imagine. I was a wrestler and then I did boxing. There's 2 totally different martial arts.
Sure.
Wrestling,
Wrestling, grappling is the most demanding thing that human beings can do.
it's really difficult, man. I imagine it's the same with jiu-jitsu. You cannot think about anything else because the second you do,
That's it.
You're done.
That's the opening that
You're
your
done.
opponent's looking for.
Yeah.
So I'm not super versed in it. I'm not going to claim that I'm a one-stripe white belt.
sure.
But I'm very linear in my thinking. Like if posit A plus posit B equals posit C, here we go. I told Ray, I was like, I need you to give me the same instructions that you give the kids because I've taken my daughter.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, nice. That's awesome. That's
okay,
awesome.
step 1, I want you to scoot your butt back twice. Okay, step 2, jump in his lap. You know, like that.
That's
Because I learned, I grew up cooking. That was my first job.
Yeah.
Like, you know, before I got into tattooing was restaurant stuff. So that's how that's literally how I learned. And so I was in class one night and had gotten my ass whipped, and he'll go through and he'll have like a point of discussion after every class.
A little debrief.
You know, I mean, and like I said, he goes from teaching Green Berets how to kill each other to
6-year-olds.
3-year-olds.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, dude, like that's first class, and he loves it. He's like, it's such a dichotomy. Like,
Yeah.
but I went online, and once again, same thing. Like there wasn't a lot of resource for men's mental health. Like,
Yeah.
I need a workbook or a book. Tell me what the fuck to do.
Yeah, give me a manual.
Give me a manual. Exactly. Like,
Yeah,
give me an instruction manual, or
Yeah.
as my little girl calls them, the destructions.
The destruction.
So I went on and I bought a jiu-jitsu journal that was pretty rad. Like physically, it was awesome. It had rounded corners. It had an elastic band, and it looked great.
Yeah.
But it read like stereo instructions, and
Yeah.
there wasn't very much room to write. And you know, Ray after class, he was like, "You got to take notes. You got to take notes because it's going to help you cement it." You know, and that's a physical thing. Like if you take notes during class, you're making a physical connection in your brain. Not if you're typing.
Sure.
You know, not if you're tapping keys.
Yeah.
If you have to create the letter. It's a physical neurological link in your brain.
Yeah.
So my daughter had just moved to Oklahoma, and I was bereft. I was in grief. Like
Yeah.
I was absolutely at the lowest I've ever been in my life. and I needed a job. I needed something to do. Like I do digital design for tattooers. That's kind of a side hustle.
Sure.
And I didn't know this, but that's how I dealt with losing my farm and being exiled from my family and having to walk away from, a lifetime of work. When my ex-wife and I found out that we were expecting, it was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got to make some money. We got to do something.
Yeah.
Like, this is the job. So
Yeah.
I started making digital design products, and that's how I coped. Because I would pour myself into these ideas, and I did the same thing with the journal. I made it in a night. Like I literally.
Are you serious?
Wow.
I did it. I started at like 7 o'clock, and I stayed up till like 2 in the morning.
Okay.
Wow.
I had one rough draft that I had done before that and had it printed, and it was real clunky, and I was like, okay, that's not what I want. And so I refined everything, and this was the genesis of this.
Okay.
It gives you an opportunity.
So if y'all are just listening, it's called The Essential Jiu-Jitsu Journal.
Yes.
By Will Bledsoe.
It's available on Amazon. So it starts off with a page worth of like a bibliography. Like this is where I got all this shit.
I got it.
So incredible books. Just an entire list of resources to give you a foundation. That would have a bearing on your jiu-jitsu game. So I put in this all boils down to like a week. So there's a weekly training schedule that literally goes through like, okay, what did you do? Cardio conditioning? Did you do strength? Did you do mobility work? Did you do recovery? And that's every day for the week. The next day is a meal plan page. Like, what did you eat? How much of it did you eat? Did you take any supplements? And then there's a week's worth of what I call the training breakdown. It's a place where you write down some quick session notes. Like today we worked on side control from the cut through, on the dummy. And it gives you a place to list the technique that you drilled specifically, because there's a lot of names. There's very specific movements or sequences of movements that are like, okay, that's Dela Hiva guard, or this is spider guard, or this is going to be inversion from reverse armbar or whatever. So give you a place to actually write notes about the session. Like here's your rolling notes, and then an area for you to say these are the things that I was strong at.
Yeah.
And in bolder print is what were the weaknesses.
So that's interesting, man. So you're breaking down. Yeah, acknowledge what you're good at, but then y'all can't see this.
You see it from
where it says weakness. You can see it from a mind.
Because that's how you learn.
Yeah.
You don't learn just doing the shit you're good at.
1,000%.
Failure, and this is what has been drilled into me through the course of my own choices and my own actions. Failure is the best teacher.
Sure. Sure. But it's also, if you think about it, even with weightlifting, what do we train to? We train to failure, because that's what builds up that.
Right.
So below that and then there's your goal progression. Like, okay, like what did you do that was the next link in your chain?
That's awesome.
So, and it gives you a section on the page after that for like more detailed notes. And this is where I like to go like movement through movement. Like, okay, I'm going to lift my leg here to go from cut through to go to mount.
That's awesome.
And then the other section for goals. And then one of the most important things that I put into it was an area for you to track your stuff off of the mat. Like, okay, how much water did I drink? Did I meditate today? Did I do my breath training? Did I study? Did I watch old school videos of Audra Gracie? Like whatever. Like, what did you do for recovery? What did you do for your sleep? Like, did you have good sleep quality?
Yeah.
And then an area for you to be mindful. Like, okay, like I'm grateful that I could get on the mat and have some sweaty asshole beat the shit out of me.
It's cool how you're tying the mental component into the physical component.
Absolutely. Well, once again, it all goes together.
It does, but
it's martial arts probably the best for just in general, just training those sorts of things.
Yeah.
From what I know of martial artists, my brother-in-law owns a jiu-jitsu studio in Midland, Texas.
Okay.
And that's always part of it. Like he's the same. He trains police officers.
Sure.
He was a police officer. But like he's always tying in the mental, he's always tying in the spiritual, he's always tying in the physical. Like these things are all important. You're not going to progress until you.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's awesome, man.
Thanks, man.
That's really
very cool.
It's there's a couple different versions of it. I have one that I made for more of the competition side of it, because jiu-jitsu, it's not most of it now is competition oriented.
Okay.
Like that's the, like, it's not so much self-defense stuff as it used to be.
Yeah.
I'm really lucky because my teacher is a professional. I mean, like he like I said, I mean, like, you ever hear anybody say, I'm a knife fighter? Laugh and walk away. But there's like 3 guys in the country that do what Ray does, and he's created a proprietary combative system that is amazing
For knife fighting?
well for low visibility conflict management.
Okay, that's cool.
It ranges from, they do CQB where they're clearing rooms,
Wow.
to pistol work,
Wow.
to pistol, to knife, to grappling. Like, he teaches the Green Beret. Their mandate was originally to go in covertly, as opposed to what they've done for the last 20 years. They've been
shock and awe and stuff.
right. They've been kicking doors and
Yeah.
just like SEALs and that kind of. The Green Berets weren't typically assaulters since their inception. They're unconventional warfare.
Yeah.
So they go in, a small number of American fighters go in and teach cadres of indigenous fighters how to do things.
Yeah.
And now they're going back to more like singleton pairs, like you're going into, Kabul or Iran or whatever, and you have to be able to be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
So his combative system integrates boxing and Muay Thai and MMA,
Yeah.
and Jiu-Jitsu and knives and guns, and so that the knife that we worked with is designed by a guy named Greg Thompson. It's called the Benchmade Sock P, and we use the Sock P Mini, and it's very, very low profile. It's something like that. It's a very small knife that you can do some really nasty things with. But there were some problems with it that, I was tattooing Ray one time, like, okay, so you're a knife fighter and you teach people how to fight with knives professionally, and you don't have your own knife. And he's like, well, I don't know any knife makers. I'm like, you do now. That was one of the things that I got into.
Wow.
So that's something that you can buy on the internet from a company called Benchmade.
Great company.
Yeah, great company. There was some problems.
Speaking of Benchmade.
Yeah.
There you go.
There were some issues with it that Ray had about usability and flogging someone else's product.
Okay.
So I sat down and I designed a different approach as opposed to. You know that boy's from Texas.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Stag handle on that.
Right.
Old school. Grandpa
go.
showed up.
Old time.
You gotta get your fingernails real quick.
That's what it's for.
Yeah.
It's a toothpick.
So rather than a traditional European sword point dagger, which is great for this,
For poking,
it's
but
not so much for cutting. And so the majority of Ray's system is about threat assessment and management.
Okay.
He also begins, very, very strongly about de-escalation.
Sure.
Like, we don't want to do this.
Verbal judo.
Yes. Like, nothing good is going to happen here.
That's right. Nobody wins because it's a complicated mess
exactly.
every time.
So
Not only is Will helping you mentally, physically, and spiritually, but he's teaching you how to kill people.
I'm not.
Well,
He knows a guy.
in the back of his tattoo studio.
Yeah.
Saturday night.
Yeah.
We're not
Fight club.
We're not allowed to talk
Fight
about
We're
club.
allowed to talk about
Talk
it.
about
No,
Fight Club.
actually, we're allowed to talk about it. There's sessions upcoming in Ray's gym.
Nice.
But so we sat down and we went through the pros and cons. And so I know you can't really tell from the trainers, but I designed a Tonto blade, which is a Japanese.
blades are awesome.
Yeah. So it's the same sort of thing as a traditional European sword point. It's made for piercing armor.
Yeah.
But it's different because there's 3 cutting edges as opposed to 2.
Okay.
So we decided to go with that, and I increased the thickness of the blade by almost double.
Okay.
So the wound channel that something like this can create is really rather devastating.
Yeah.
Devastating.
Worse than bullets.
Guns are loud and yeah, I mean, knife crime and knife violence is terrifying.
Yeah.
It's ancient,
Yeah.
it's bad, and it's awful.
Causes huge messes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, when I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that I ever want to cut anybody or that I want to hurt anybody or anything like that, but I want to know how to do these things in case I have to.
Absolutely.
So, it's been really an amazing process to go through. I've made knives of my own before. This is a production piece, so doing 500 or something like this is outside of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
But I designed our sheath.
That's amazing.
A buddy of mine, he's now a buddy. I found him online. He's my CAD designer up in New York. I pay him to take my doodles and turn them into reality.
Yeah.
So we tried every way we knew how over the course of the last 2.5 years to to have this done domestically. And when you don't have a manufacturing capacity of your own,
Sure.
made in the USA is not possible.
That's right.
So we have decided to go overseas, and we're about this far away. We have samples that should be here within the
Awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah, man. It's 2.5 years of. I've got like the original. Like I'm going to put them in a shadow box. Like this is what the idea
Very
started
cool.
as, and this is how it's progressed.
Very cool.
Yeah, progression.
Yeah, man.
That's
So,
awesome.
That being said, having someone that is in every sense of the word a warrior with a warrior's mindset become a mentor. Ray is, like I said, he's not old enough to be my dad, but he's very much
Big
my
brother.
Very
brother.
cool.
Yeah.
And he has changed my life in a very dramatic way. And he's on the list. I thank God for him every single day.
That's amazing.
Because he pushes you. Any of his students, he's got 400 students. Whether you're a 3-year-old or a 43-year-old, he pushes you to be better, and he pushes you to work hard.
That's awesome.
One of the biggest things, like I put in here, he's got it stenciled on the wall of the gym. Effort is a choice, and that's
Great.
I designed this sticker for him. And just from listening to the debrief after class one night, success requires commitment and sacrifice.
Very cool.
So he's the type of man that I like to surround myself with, that forces me to bring my A game and to not give in to the bullshit that's in your head and to be a better man.
I love that.
Yeah, man. So I mean, like I said,
I love that.
him walking into my life was the hand of God.
What's the name of the shop? Give it a shout out.
TBJJA, it's Tennessee Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy. It's on Main Street in Spring Hill.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give, our listeners out there, maybe that are similar story or struggling, maybe they're co-parenting or they just can't tie in the physical and the mental component. What advice would you give someone, say just a quick little, brief summary of how would you suggest someone, kind of find help or kind of start their journey? Obviously, we're not mental health professionals.
Not
so this is
professional.
just us sharing,
Yeah.
our opinions. And if you really are having struggles, we recommend you
Get a professional.
get a professional and call a hotline.
Right.
And we'll try to put that on the video.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Plug that number.
Suicide among men at this point is higher than it's ever been in history, and that's a fucking shame.
Yeah,
It's a real
it's
but
The statistics for construction workers, male construction workers, now surpass.
Yeah.
I mean, every other.
Yeah.
It's like something every 11 minutes.
well, and you and I
Every level.
are in the highest category. 40 to 50
Yep.
is a really big.
Well, I mean, the people are now understanding that the deck is stacked against them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that all of those illusions from your childhood are
Right.
gone.
Are gone.
Yeah.
So my advice would be to, number one, is do everything that you can to understand who and what you are, to find a place of acceptance in your life. And this has been a very recent development in my life, is to accept where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And accept that where I am is a direct result, primarily, of the decisions that I've made.
Mm-hmm.
And to own your shit. Own it and say, you know what? I fucked up.
Yeah.
It's my fault.
Amen.
Own it and say, hey, you know what? I don't know how to handle this. I need help.
Need help, sure.
Yeah.
And find somebody.
And that does not make you weak.
That does not
to
make
ask
you
for
weak.
help.
Absolutely.
No, man, it makes you strong.
It makes you a real man.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. What's worse? And this is from my own experience, because this is what I did.
Yeah.
I'm going to do everything on my own. I don't need any help.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to blunder along until I fuck up so bad that everything changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or,
You lose everything.
and you lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
Or swallowing your pride and saying, you know what, I don't know how to navigate this.
Mhm.
I didn't have this insight as a child. I wasn't taught how to manage these things. I need help to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That is the true definition of a self-aware man.
Man. Yeah.
Not a child saying, you know what, I own my shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to move forward as best I can with the knowledge. And that's another thing is own your portion of everything that you're going through. Forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've made, and that's hard.
It's very hard.
That's hard.
It's very hard. Very
But-
hard.
Put forth the effort that's required, and if that means that it's something that you've never done, if it means you're 400 pounds and you feel like you're at the end of your rope and you want to start a new life. Make changes, make little changes. How do you eat an elephant?
That's right.
One bite at a time,
bro. Like, that's the only way. So
yeah, it's interesting. I think this is, again, it's like I say it all the time. Guys are dumb. And the biggest thing that's like, your house is on fire. You don't go plug your garden hose up into the fire hydrant and get out the house. You call the professionals.
Yeah.
Right.
And you have no shame in doing that. Hell yeah, I called the fire department.
Well, I mean,
I'm dumb. Well, if your brain's on fire, the first thing we do is, I'm fine.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm
This
good.
is totally
I'm cool.
I'm
Yeah.
cool.
I'm cool.
Well, I mean,
You're not. You're not.
because there's been such a stigma
Yeah.
perennially of not being a man by saying, you know what, I'm not okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
That I know men that would walk over broken glass,
Sure.
as opposed to saying, you know what,
I need some
I need help.
Yeah.
So
And I was one of them for a
Me
while.
too. Me too, man.
same,
Yeah.
you know, and I made a lot of terrible decisions, and I hurt people.
Yeah, and that's the
And
real
that's
thing is, if you want to hurt you, and I'm fairly libertarian in the way I live. If you do something, you make decisions for yourself, and it only affects you,
So
by
be
all
it.
means.
So be it.
But the minute it starts affecting other people,
That's
you got
problem.
to address that.
That's
as
the
a
problem.
man.
Yeah.
And you don't live in a silo. I don't care if all you do is go to work and go home every day, and that's it. You affect people.
Yeah, you
Exactly.
You do.
Everywhere you go.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I mean, being present and self-aware enough to say, you know what, okay, like, my words have repercussions.
Sure.
My actions have repercussions. I need to understand that and move forward accordingly. If you don't have the toolbox, there are assets available to you. You know, if you're thinking,
And a lot of them are free, by the way.
for
Yeah,
sure, for
they
sure,
are.
No,
you know,
and anonymous.
you know,
Yeah.
and if you're in a position where you feel like you're at the end of your rope, and you feel like, and because God knows I've been there, I'm a child of a man who killed himself. Statistically, I'm more likely to blow my brains out than
The
someone.
next person.
No,
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not saying that's the case, but call somebody,
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
call somebody,
Yeah.
talk to somebody,
Yeah.
because if you feel like the world would be better without you in it, you need help.
Yeah.
And you're wrong.
And that's it. Like, no matter who it is, if it's the person at the gas station that you see every Thursday because you get a Snickers bar and a pack of peanuts, you're going to leave someone
Missing.
bereft.
That's
Someone
right.
is going to miss you, and it may not
Yeah.
feel like that.
No, I know, and I know what that. I mean, from a young age, I moved in with my mom and got out of my home situation when I was 12. I basically just left no room for discussion. I was like, I'm going.
Right.
That's it. But prior to that, I mean, I had tried to hang myself, which is the stupidest, like, not pleasant way to go. And I like panicked and got out. But like, I mean, I'd been down that road, and I know what that despair really feels like, and what it truly feels like to be like, hey, you know, it's not a good place to be.
No.
And again, for anybody listening, watching, whatever, the first inkling of that feeling, like you would be, the world is better off, my kids would be better off, my wife would be better off, whatever it is, it's so wrong and it's so far from reality. And the thing about being a man is, it's difficult and we take on a lot, and traditionally our role is to put the weight of the world on our shoulders, and that's cool.
Until it's not.
Until it starts crushing your head.
Well, that's
Right.
in my experience personally. The things that the losses that I've gone through, and the things that I've had to face, were so monumental, and they hurt so bad.
Sure.
To sit with, and that's what's required.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do
Yeah.
in order to heal.
Yep.
You have to sit down and you have to sit with it and go, okay.
Yeah.
And it would be best if you sat down and wrote it down
Yeah.
and said, okay,
Yeah.
because there's huge studies. Huberman talks about it, like 15 minutes, 4 times a month.
Yeah.
Once a week, you write for 15 minutes about a specific incident, and it will help you. Like, it's literally like backing up a memory card.
Mhm.
You know, you're like, okay, like I can let that go because
Yeah.
you're not carrying it.
That's right.
But it's not something that I put a lot of energy into taking care of myself. I was trying to take care of my ex-wife.
That's
I was
right.
trying to take care of my
Your daughter.
daughter. I was
Yeah.
trying to take care of my
My business.
business. I was trying to take care of all the guys, all the things.
Yeah.
I don't have time to worry about me.
Right.
And then
I'm fine.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's the little meme. It's the little dog in the hat with the dumpster
Yeah.
with the room's on fire.
Yeah.
Like, this is fine.
Yeah.
This is okay.
You know, and then I would be just bewildered when my ex-wife would have a problem with this curmudgeon that she was living with.
For sure.
Like, well, fuck, man, like,
What else do you want from me?
What do you want? Like,
Yeah,
but and she was like, well, I would like for you to be the kind man that I married. I'm like, well, I don't know that I was ever that person.
I think something too important to point out, and I don't mean to cut you off a little bit. All of this stuff, all this self-awareness, it's not a quick fix.
No, man.
It's an ongoing process. It's like going to the gym. It's like doing jujitsu. You've got to continue to grow. You're not just going to hit a 12-week goal. Okay, I'm good now. I'm fine, and I can process this. You've got to put the work into it.
Yeah.
And it sucks, man. It's hard, I think. I mean, it is brutal, but it pays off because I have seen it personally make me a better dad, a better partner,
100%.
a better business owner, because I look at life with a whole different
Perspective.
outlook. Yeah, man. And so I don't want our viewers to kind of get maybe a false impression that I can read a Jordan Peterson book and now I'm going to be, and I love Jordan Peterson, but now I'm good to go, or I can attend a men's group, once a month for a year and I'm great. Now you got to continue to put that effort
Well, this is
into it.
every day.
Yeah, it is.
And it's a choice every single day.
Right.
And that's, that effort is a choice.
It is. It is.
This is something that Joe Rogan was talking about. It was like, he had, I think he was talking about Bert Kreischer. He's like, well, I don't want to be sore after I work out. He's like, okay, well, we're going to go in, we're going to do 5 squats or 5 push-ups or whatever. We're going to, you've taken 20 years, 30 years to get to be this fat mess.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
You're not going to get fit in 30 minutes.
No.
Like this is going to be the beginning of a process, the beginning of a journey.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
And the first step is acknowledging that there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Second step is creating a plan.
Mm-hmm.
The special forces guys, the operators, they talk about prepare, plan, and execute.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm going to get ready to make this change in my life. Okay, that means I'm going to start getting up earlier. It means I'm going to change what I got in the refrigerator. It means I'm going to change my inner dialogue. And that was something that I never really thought about. Like
Inner dialogue.
That's tough.
Holy
That's
shit,
a tough
man,
one.
like-
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
I'm so self-deprecating, and I've always done it in a funny way.
oh, dude, the
But
way
then it sinks in.
the
You
way
start
that-
like,
the
I'm
way
sorry for making fun of your knife.
the way that you speak to yourself
Yeah.
is a mirror to how you speak to others.
It is.
And I didn't know that until I was in a situation, like I said, with my ex-wife. Like, I didn't realize that the way that I spoke to her was hurtful,
Yeah.
because that's the way that I've been
that's the way you
spoken
speak to yourself.
Well, it was the way I'd been spoken to my
Yeah.
whole life, which in turn was the way that I speak to myself.
Yeah.
So now I'm in a place in my life where I'm like, okay, like how I talk to my daughter
Mm-hmm.
is how she's going to talk to herself for the rest of her life.
Well, and it's
And so
it's
that's
the
one of those
archetype
things
of what
where,
she
like-
expects to be spoken to as well. And that's
Exactly.
even more.
Even more like
Yeah.
so I refuse to pass on. Like I said, I was estranged from both of my parents at the times of their deaths. One died by his own hand. The other one died pretty much alone on the floor. I don't want that for my child.
That's right.
That's right. But I refuse to be party to the same things that damaged me in such fundamental ways.
Yeah.
From damaging my child, because she is the sweetest, kindest, most gentle soul I've ever met in my entire life.
Well, I think it's cool, man, because you got an opportunity, and everybody listening, and everybody in the world has an opportunity to flip the script, right? Like
Absolutely.
everybody, I'm a big cinephile. Like I love movies more than anything, recreationally.
Richard Gere movies?
Always Richard Gere or Patrick Swayze movies.
I like the Patrick
Give me some Swayze.
Bodie.
No, but the reality is, like, you watch these movies and there's a hero, right? You get to be the hero of your own story. And it doesn't matter. Like, the movie might pick up, like, with you sitting on a beanbag, 300 pounds overweight and not feeling good. But today's the day, like, my hero story starts. This is the arc that I'm going to take. It's such a cool place to be. And it also breaks the cycle that goes back probably
Thousands
Yeah.
of years.
Yeah,
Thousands
yeah,
of years.
yeah.
That stuff, no harvest happens without sowing seeds.
and it's a lot of seeds sown, especially with American men.
Sure.
European, I know I have a lot of friends from Europe. I have a lot of friends from, or have had a lot from the Middle East. Their cultures are ancient cultures, right? Like they go back a long ways, and they've got issues. They've got their struggles, but for the most part, they're a lot more evened out. Dude, our generations here go back a couple hundred years,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and it was chaos and death for like 200 years, like up until like yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, this is the first time in U.S. history that it's actually pretty comfortable to live in the last couple generations.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, it also comes down to, once again, you know, I mean, you have societal norms that, like you said, like, okay, well, you know, World War II vets, they got home, and I mean, Vietnam vets, like, you know,
Korean vets.
my brother came back from Afghanistan, and they were like, he was like, okay, when he rotated out of the Marine Corps, they had a 30-minute class. 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
One.
After a 20-year war.
30-minute class for reintegration, and it boiled down to, don't say fuck all the time, and try not to kill anybody.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the world.
Yeah.
You know, so that they don't give anybody any tools to manage these things, and of course, you know, these things haven't been widely available because we didn't know as a culture really the root causes of all of these endemic things. So what was it? Primary coping mechanisms. Let's numb it out with booze and dope.
Dope.
Booze, dopes, you know,
Fighting.
sex, fighting,
Yep.
all this stuff. So I mean, like, and then you transfer that into, you know, cell phones and television.
That's right.
And football.
That's
So
right.
you're constantly given a circus to occupy your attention, so you're not thinking about the things like, you know what, man, maybe if I was a kinder human being, my wife would, you know, appreciate me.
That's right.
Maybe if I wasn't, you know, such a bastard to be around,
Yeah.
our home life wouldn't be, you know, shit, you know, like, so it's taken losing all of those things
Sure.
to understand, like, okay, well, I'm complicit in my own destruction.
One of the things I really hope is that young guys watching this, like, even I think about my boys, my oldest is 13, you know, and he's got 5 years before he's doing whatever,
Right.
you know, as an adult, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that young men can watch a show like this and go, okay, so let's not lose everything.
Let's not
to get
do
to this
that.
point.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is, if you start off early enough,
Yes.
Right.
then the thing, I mean, I'm not saying I have the keys to a great life or
You
anything
do.
like
In fact, I put that at the intro. If you got problems with this guy,
This guy here.
Go get a tattoo. You'll
Yeah.
figure out whole life
that.
out.
Tattoos make everything better, right?
That's
But
right.
only by professionals, you know. So
only by Will Bledsoe.
that's right.
We use a special ink.
Yeah.
Right, for sure. But I mean, if you know, I try to talk to, you know, like, you notice when you have people that you know, come into your shop and you work on their bodies, like, you notice what shape that they're in.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have a lot of young guys and gals that are athletes. You know. I mean, I have a great clientele from the jiu-jitsu gym. So you're like, okay, like, well, you know, all this hard work that you put in to be a D1 player, you know, like, keep doing that shit. Because by the time you're my age,
Yeah.
you know, the chances are that you know, I think what's the obesity rate now? 40%.
It's higher.
It's higher.
You know,
It's
like,
hard now. It's like 75-80%.
it's bad.
It's way.
It's bad. I mean, so I walk around the grocery store. I mean, I eat a very, very simple diet, and I walk around the grocery store and I kind of silently judge people because I'm like, the information is out there.
Yeah.
The
Chance
information
is my grocery store.
There you go. You know, I mean, well, I mean, then yet, so, you know, could your grandparents eat it? No, then fuck off.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't do that, man. And this is, I love Cheez-Its.
I'll say this,
I love
though, man.
Doritos.
I tell this to people because I work with people in their nutrition every day of the week. And in fact, I really only physically work a couple days a week. And the rest of that's like talking to people. And
Sure.
like, hey, man, I'm struggling. Like, I don't like this. Like, find one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, mine is donuts.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It provides me like mental
Sure.
joy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Kill a donut.
Yeah.
Don't eat donuts every day.
Right.
All
Yeah.
day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? But like, you're eating healthy, you're exercising, you're doing the right things. If the one thing is going to stop like whatever it is as an impediment, that's fine. It's a donut, dude.
Sure.
Like, you can eat a donut.
Well, it's
You know, I do the same thing.
I eat
you know.
12 and then it's a problem.
Right.
But-
I take my daughter to Wits,
Oh, yeah.
frozen custard.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Berry Farms.
Very
So
good.
I had her for 5 weeks, and you have thousands of photographs from the visit. And you want to go get some custard? Custard! You know,
Nice.
so,
That's awesome.
every Saturday,
Yeah, man.
I take $6 or whatever, and I get a chocolate dipped cone scoop of chocolate custard.
Yeah.
And I will either drive down the road licking my fucking custard, or I'll sit, you know, and just think about how something simple can give me a moment of time travel back to, you know, when my girl was here. Like, I go to get her on Thursday, and then Friday afternoon, I guarantee you, dog,
You're eating
custard.
Yeah.
You know, so
that's awesome.
so yeah, I mean, within reason, you know, have a treat.
Have a
Yeah.
treat.
Absolutely.
But that's what it is. It's a reward.
It's a treat.
It's a treat.
It's
Right.
not what we eat all the time, you know.
That's
So
right.
I mean, get started on a mental and physical and spiritual path young and early.
Yeah.
Save your money. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses.
No.
And focus on being a good, kind human being.
Well, and in closing too, I want to hit on the world lives for pleasure.
That's right.
And as men, we need to live with purpose.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And doing all the stuff that Will's talked about, that Chance and I have shared, we're all trying to find, we're working towards our purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's most important because, like you said earlier, it's going to trickle down. Your kids are going to see it. And, I kind of apply some of the same things with my son that you do with Junie. And we're a small percentage, guys. And I'm hoping that this podcast will kind of provide a platform for other men out there to see, hey, it's not too late.
No.
I can be the hero. And I may not be the hero in my mind that I've created, but I'm a better version of myself because I'm learning to love myself, forgive myself, and work towards, not being a victim, but acknowledging bad shit happened to me.
Yeah.
But I'm not a victim. I'm not going to let this define who I am.
Sure.
And I encourage any man out there to find a group, or if you're in the local area, get in touch with us.
Yep.
With social media nowadays, it's easy.
Sure.
Go get a tattoo.
Yeah, man.
And talk about your shit with a group of dudes that you trust and work on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because everybody has a purpose.
Do the work.
Yeah, do the work.
And also, if there's shitbirds in your group,
cut them out.
cut them.
Cut them out, man.
Well, if you hang out with 5 smokers, you're going to be the 6th.
Yep.
That's right.
If you hang out with 5 people that sit around and gossip and talk shit about your friends, then that's what you're going to do.
That's all you got to do.
There is a great scripture, and it's bad company corrupts good character. And I believe Brother Paul says that. But I think of that a lot, man.
I do too, and it's hard because I think you should be out there working with people in bad situations to get them, you show them that there's better situations out there. Doesn't mean you have to live with them. Doesn't mean you have to party.
Yeah, you can help them, but your inner circle, I think, needs to be like-minded individuals. And as you grow,
Hopefully better.
well, yeah,
Right.
better.
Well,
Exactly.
That's it. I mean, I want every man at the table that I'm at to be better than me.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's how you're going to grow.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the only way that you're going to grow.
Yeah.
Through failure and through introspection and through positive example. I mean, Joseph Campbell said, "The cave in which you fear to enter holds the work that will set you free." I mean,
that's awesome.
It's like you have to be able to address the things that you know are wrong. You have to be able to identify that,
right?
And you have to be able to move through it
and be prepared. As you grow, your circle is going to get smaller because people are not going to want to hang out with someone
doing well
that's not doing everything that they're doing.
That's right.
So alcohol, drugs, whatever. I mean, it's going to get small, guys, and it's worth it. Because like you said, the person at the gas station over there is buying a Snickers bar, they may really look up to you.
Right.
And it's weird being on the other side of this as you get healthy and people start to look towards you and you're like, whoa, okay.
Why are you calling me?
Dude, I deactivated my Instagram account for 18 months after my divorce.
Yeah.
And I had a buddy of mine reach out and he was like, "Hey man, I don't want this to sound weird to you or anything, but I really wish that you would bring it back because what you share helps a lot of people."
Yeah, it does. It does.
And I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He's like, "No, man." He's like, "You don't seem to understand. Like, people are going through things.
Yep.
And they don't talk about it.
Yep.
And he's like, I just want to let you know from personal experience that this is important. And so, whatever claim to any of that I have, I try to, I had a lady I met at Cheapwood with my daughter over the summer. She's like, "Look, I don't know you, but I just really enjoy the stuff that you put out because it's incredibly fresh and incredibly genuine." She's like, "I know that you're coming from this position of authenticity, and it shows."
Yeah.
So that's it, man. Like,
That's killer.
It's killer. Yeah.
Cool to hear.
Yeah. Very cool.
yeah. I mean, I don't know how to take a compliment. I mean, I grew up hearing about what a shit I was, so like, it's really like somebody compliments my work or something that I've created or something that I've done, and I don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, okay. Thank you. Why'd you make it weird?"
Well, if you have any doubts about if you have any doubts about Will's work and his tattoo skills, most of my body's covered in tattoos. You can't see them, but Will has done about 90% of them. So
it's awesome.
Yeah, and he is a solid guy. And brother, it's a pleasure to have you on our first episode.
You gonna plug anything, man?
Yeah,
Like
man.
your books? Your
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the men's mental health journal is called Seeking Light in Dark Places. It's on Amazon. So is the Essential Jiu-Jitsu journal. As soon as I have samples from the manufacturer, the the Rhino Combatives blade is going to be in effect and for sale.
Nice.
Yeah, man, that's
Keep us in the loop.
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, my knife company's called American
Do you
Tool
make any
Knife.
of them super tiny?
No.
Looking for a certain aesthetic.
Right.
Anything,
Size doesn't matter,
anything
sir.
to make myself.
It's what you do to it. Do with it, bro.
Yeah.
It's what you do.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you guys having me. I've had a great time.
Yeah, man.
Great to get to know you, man.
Yeah, man. I'm like I said, at this point, I'm an open book. Yeah, and it's an honor to be able to. That's what the one thing with the mental health journal is that, you know, having one guy come back and say, hey man, you know what, this has helped me change my life. What is it they say in the military, that once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, and 3 times is enemy action. When more than one person has come to you and told you that, it's an incredibly humbling experience.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I did something right.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking from personal experience, I have this book at my house, and you know, when we linked up about a year ago, and you gave me a copy, and it kind of taught me how to really journal.
Yeah, you
How
were
to
talking about this just
Yeah,
the other day.
it's
Unreal.
incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of gives you some prompts, and you kind of go through it, and it helped me a lot. I mean, I'm a big believer in journaling. I think it's good because I'm someone in the past that struggled with not controlling my emotions, and it helps me write stuff out before
you spill
it's yeah.
That's what we call practicing the pause.
Yeah.
Something so simple as it's literally like, before any thought or action, ask yourself, is this going to help me or is this going to hurt me?
Yeah.
And take 10 seconds and breathe. Once again, it comes all back to the breath.
Yeah.
And that has been something that's been a game changer for me, because I mean, for years I walked around at like, 95% capacity.
Just anything.
And anything just like, you know, and that's not who I am.
Why is that bird red, not blue?
Right, some guy cuts you off in traffic, and you see this now in our culture where people are pulling guns on folks. And
We got a client that got shot for changing lanes. That's literally all he did. Didn't even cut the guy off. Just he got in front of somebody, did not want anybody in front of him.
What a time to be alive.
That's stupid.
Yeah,
Let's make the world a better place, boys.
absolutely.
All right, guys.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.